Bellwether Lodge, including the main house, guest cabins, marina, equipment, vehicles, and all associated business interests, I leave in equal shares to my sons, Grant Ellis Bell and Owen Robert Bell. Mara heard Grant exhale through his nose. Not a gasp, not surprise, just the soft release of a man whose luggage had finally appeared on the carousel. The lawyer turned one page. To my daughter, Mara June Bell, I leave the former staff cottage located beyond the Eastern Service Yard, together with its furnishings and the lot on which it stands. That was all. 32 guest cabins for her brothers. A dining room with her mother's blue china displayed above the mantel. The dock where Mara had scattered her father's ashes 6 days earlier. The lake, the boats, the family apartment, the office where she had slept on the couch whenever his chest pains got bad. Mara got the cottage behind the laundry. Her father had once told a banquet guest, right in front of her, that Mara knew Bellwether better than any of them. She knew its bones, he'd said. So why had he left her the place where Bellwether stored its broken chairs? "Would you like me to continue?" the lawyer asked. Grant shifted in his seat. Of course, of course. There were checking accounts, personal effects, and 2 old fishing rods still to be distributed. Mara sat with her palms flat on the polished conference table. Someone had put a box of tissues near her left elbow, angled toward her, as if the lawyer's assistant had measured the likely grief radius of each surviving Bell. The box was decorated with watercolor lemons. Across from her, Owen stared at the tabletop. His suit was navy and fit him perfectly except at the collar, where he had missed the button. Mara had noticed that when he walked in. She had nearly reached up to fix it out of habit. Grant wore no tie. Grant believed ties made people look as though they were asking permission. Beside Mara, Inez Calder smelled faintly of ivory soap and the peppermint candies she carried in every coat she owned. She was not family, and she was not named in the will. She had come because Mara had asked her to. Grant had raised an eyebrow when he saw her, but the lawyer had said there was no objection if all beneficiaries agreed. Now, Inez slid her hand under the table and wrapped cool fingers around Mara's wrist. Mara kept looking straight ahead. Their father's attorney, Neil Voss, continued in the same careful voice. Leonard Bell's truck went to Grant. His watches went to Owen. Mara received his personal books, except those kept in the lodge library which belonged to the business. Grant received the fishing rods. That almost made Mara laugh. Their father had hated fishing. He owned the rods because guests sometimes arrived convinced that lake water made them outdoorsmen. Leonard would lend them equipment, point toward the marina, and then watch from the breakfast room while they tangled lines around their own ankles. The laugh rose anyway, sharp and dangerous. Mara covered it with a cough. Neil looked up. "Would you like some water?" "I'm fine." Owen finally looked at her. His eyes were the same gray as hers and their father's. People used to call the 3 of them the storm front. Grant had their mother's brown eyes and none of her ability to make those eyes kind. "The cottage has its own parcel," Neil said when he reached the final page. "There will be routine transfer documents. My office can walk each of you through those." "How much land?" Grant asked. Owen's head turned. "Seriously? I'm asking for clarity." Neil consulted a folder. "Just under 4/10 of an acre." Grant nodded once, mentally placing the boundaries. Mara could almost see him doing it. Laundry yard to the west, service road to the north, propane tanks safely outside the line. He had been back in town for 4 days and already looked at Bellwether as colored shapes on a site plan. "Dad had that surveyed?" Owen asked. "Approximately 3 years ago." 3 years. Their mother had been dead for 2. 3 years ago, Mara had been taking 1 online accounting class at a time and waking twice a night to check whether her father was breathing. Grant had been in Chicago, opening a hotel where the lobby chairs looked like clenched fists. Owen had been managing restaurant partnerships for a company that called Dinner and Experience. 3 years ago, their father had gone to a surveyor. He had known. "Did he leave a letter?" Mara asked. The room went still in a small, impolite way. Neil's face softened, which was answer enough. "There were no personal letters deposited with my office." Grant folded his hands. Dad wasn't really a letter person. Mara looked at him. "Thank you, Grant. I had met him." Inez's thumb pressed once against the inside of her wrist. Grant glanced toward the window. Neil's office overlooked a pharmacy parking lot where a woman in red scrubs was trying to shove a case of bottled water into the back seat of a compact car. Ordinary life continued with offensive efficiency. Owen leaned forward. There may be things at the lodge. He kept notes everywhere. Maintenance notes, Mara said. I'm just saying we haven't gone through everything. Grant's jaw tightened. We're not going to turn the place upside down, looking for a sentimental explanation that might not exist. That was Grant's particular talent. He could say the cruelest thing in the room with the weary tone of someone forced to mention it. Neil cleared his throat. If there are no immediate questions, I'll have my assistant schedule separate appointments regarding the transfers. Grant had immediate questions: insurance, payroll authority, bank access, vendor contracts. Each one struck the table with a little metallic click. He had brought a leather notebook and wrote Neil's answers in block capitals. Mara had brought nothing. Until that morning, she had assumed the lodge would be divided 3 ways, not because her father had promised it. Leonard Bell did not promise what he believed should be obvious, but Mara had worked there since she was old enough to carry a stack of towels without dragging them, and for the last 5 years, she had done everything that fell between job descriptions. Reservations at dawn, bar inventory after midnight, mouse traps, wedding chairs, a guest's lost dental bridge, recovered from a laundry bag with kitchen tongs. She had not imagined getting the lakefront third. She had not carved the property in her head. She had only imagined that she belonged somewhere inside it. When they stood, Mara's legs felt oddly reliable. She buttoned her black coat. She thanked Neil because there were habits even humiliation could not reach. Inez took 2 lemon tissues and put them in her purse. Outside, July heat met them like the breath from an oven. The lawyer's air conditioning had chilled Mara's arms, and for a few seconds, the warmth felt good. Grant stopped beside his rented SUV. We should talk at the lodge. About what? Transition. Mara looked across the roof of his vehicle at Owen. That's a word people use when they already decided something. Owen pushed both hands into his trouser pockets. Can we not do this in a parking lot? Why? Is there a better parking lot? Inez made a sound that might have been a cough. Grant removed his sunglasses. Without them, he looked tired. There were purple half-moons beneath his eyes, and Mara remembered that he had been the one to speak at the funeral when Owen couldn't. He had stood beside their father's closed casket and told the story about Leonard teaching them all to skate on the frozen shallows. Grant's voice had broken on Mara's name. Now he said, "Nobody is trying to hurt you. Then this is going extremely well by accident." Mara. Owen's voice was gentle, which was worse. Come back with us. We'll sit down. We have some ideas. We? He glanced at Grant. There it was, a whole conversation conducted without her, while she chose hymns, canceled produce deliveries, and called 12 August brides to assure them their receptions would still happen. Inez hooked her handbag over one shoulder. Mara's riding with me. Grant looked as though he had forgotten she was there. I can drive myself, Mara said. I know, Inez replied. You're still riding with me. Inez's Buick smelled of peppermint, warm vinyl, and the faint permanent ghost of French fries. A cardboard sunshade printed with 2 enormous blue eyes lay folded on the back seat. Mara fastened her seatbelt. Inez did not start the car. For a while, neither of them spoke. Through the windshield, Mara watched Grant's SUV pull out. Owen sat in the passenger seat, his face turned toward the window. I'm not going to ask if you're all right, Inez said. Good. It's a foolish question. Your father just gave you the employee's outhouse. It has indoor plumbing. Some days, Mara laughed before she could stop herself. It came out ugly and wet. She covered her face. Inez waited. That was one of the things Mara loved most about her. Inez never rushed to fill another person's pain with instructions. She sat with one hand on the steering wheel and let Mara cry until the crying became embarrassing, then exhausting, then merely damp. I stayed, Mara said into her palms. I know. I was there every day. I know that too. Grant sent flowers when Dad had the bypass. Owen came for 4 days and reorganized the liquor shelves. I slept in his room for 3 months because Dad kept trying to get downstairs by himself. Inez reached into her purse and handed her a lemon tissue. Mara wiped beneath her eyes. Maybe Dad thought they were better at it. At what? Running the place. Your brother Owen once asked me whether fitted sheets came pre-folded. Despite herself, Mara smiled. He was 22, she said. He had a college degree. That's not the same thing as sense. No, Inez said. Sometimes it interferes. She started the Buick. The air conditioning blew hot for the first 30 seconds, stirring a grocery receipt around Mara's shoes. They drove north through town, past the hardware store, the white steeple of St. Andrew's, and the diner where Leonard Bell had eaten oatmeal every Tuesday while complaining that no one knew how to make oatmeal. Summer traffic thickened near the lake. Roof racks carried bright kayaks. A convertible full of adults in matching sunglasses rolled by with music thumping, and Mara felt a sudden, unreasonable hatred for everyone having a normal July. Bellwether's wooden sign appeared at the bend in the road. The painted gold letters had faded around the edges. Beneath them, purple petunias spilled from stone planters Mara had watered that morning. Inez turned down the service road instead of taking the guest drive. The cottage stood beyond the laundry building, partly hidden by 2 white pines. It was smaller than Mara remembered, or perhaps it had looked larger when it wasn't hers. Brown shingles curled from the roof. One screen hung loose from the porch. The steps leaned left, while the porch leaned right, giving the whole structure the expression of a drunk attempting dignity. Someone had set 3 black garbage bags beside the door. Mara got out slowly. Luis Ortega emerged from behind the laundry building with a wrench in one hand. He wore navy work pants and a gray bellwether shirt, darkened with sweat between his shoulders. "I heard," he said. "News at the lodge traveled faster than fire and with better snacks." "Apparently I'm a landowner," Myra said. Luis looked at the cottage. "Don't get arrogant." The screen door opened. Walt Pritchard stepped out carrying a broken lamp. Though Walt had retired from Bellwether 4 years ago and had no obvious reason to be inside her inheritance. "What are you doing?" Mara asked. "Saving you from tetanus. You heard too?" "Inez called me from the lawyer's bathroom." Mara turned. Inez was removing the garbage bags from the porch, as though she had not just been accused of coordinating an occupation. Walt set the lamp in the gravel. Roof leaks over the back bedroom. Water heater makes a noise like a goose being murdered. Porch'll hold if nobody dances. "Good," Mara said. "I wasn't planning a ball." From beyond the pines came the low mechanical growl of Grant's rental SUV climbing the main drive toward the lodge. Luis looked in that direction, then back at Mara. Something passed across his face. Anger, caution. Perhaps the first shape of a decision none of them could yet name. "We should get your things inside," Inez said. Mara opened one of the garbage bags. Her shoes were on top, tangled with 2 winter sweaters and the blue robe she kept on the hook behind her bedroom door. Someone had packed her life from the family apartment while she sat in Neil Voss's office. Grant's efficiency, or Owen's shame. She lifted the bag. The plastic stretched around a hanger and nearly tore. Across the grounds, Bellwether's kitchen bell rang twice. Lunch service. Through the trees, the lodge windows flashed in the sun, broad and golden and familiar. Mara carried her things into the staff cottage by the back door. The cottage smelled of wet wood, mouse droppings, and the artificial pine of a cleaning product no one had used recently enough to deserve credit. Mara lowered the bag onto cracked linoleum. What had once been a common room was crowded with old resort furniture, 2 dining chairs that did not match, a wicker love seat with 1 arm unraveling, 3 stacked end tables, and a luggage rack branded with the logo Bellwether had stopped using in 1998. A faded print of sailboats hung crooked over a brick fireplace. The fireplace had been filled with golf umbrellas. "I always wondered where those went," Mara said. "Your father threw nothing away if it had disappointed him personally," Walt said. He brought in the second bag. Luis followed with a cardboard box that had been waiting on the porch beneath the garbage bags. Mara recognized her handwriting on the side. Christmas fragile. It held no Christmas decorations now. A pair of jeans drooped over one edge. "Who packed this?" Luis asked. "I don't know." "I do," Inez said. "It wasn't a woman." She pulled out 1 black heel, then reached deep into the box and found its mate beneath Mara's electric kettle. The heel was wrapped in a bath towel. The kettle was not. Walt nodded solemnly. Strong evidence. Mara opened another bag. Her clothes had been scooped from drawers in folded layers, preserving their general shape but none of their dignity. Tucked between 2 shirts was the framed photograph from her nightstand. Leonard and Evelyn Bell on the lodge dock, sunburned and laughing, her mother holding her sandals in one hand. The glass was intact. Owen, then. Grant would have delegated the packing. Owen would have done it badly and believed the towel around 1 shoe counted as tenderness. "I should go up there," Mara said. Inez stopped untangling hangers. "For what?" "My laptop is still in the office. Dad's medication needs to be taken to the pharmacy disposal. There are reservation notes all over my desk, and nobody knows Mrs. Falco needs a first-floor room because she won't admit she can't manage the stairs. That sounds like their problem, Walt said. It becomes Mrs. Falco's problem when they put her in Cedar 6. Mara, Inez said quietly, I'm not going to beg. No one had accused her of planning to. That made it worse. She set the photograph on the least dusty end table and brushed hair from her face. Her funeral dress had begun to stick between her shoulder blades. I need my keys. Luis looked at the ring in her hand. It held 17 keys, most labeled with small squares of colored tape. The red one opened the liquor room. Yellow was the marina shed. Two nearly identical brass keys opened the office and the cabinet where Leonard had kept emergency cash, though the cabinet had contained nothing but stale peppermints for the last 6 months. Luis touched the green tape key with one finger. Laundry side door. Yes. Grant changed that lock this morning. Mara stared at him. Called a locksmith from Traverse City, Luis said. Wouldn't use Pat Donnelly because Pat asks questions. He changed one lock, office 2. Family apartment, wine room. Walt whistled. Fast worker. Grant doesn't trust grief, Mara said. It has no quarterly targets. Inez gave her a look, but Luis's mouth twitched. The gravel outside crunched beneath tires. A car door shut, followed by another. Mara did not need to look through the screen. Grant knocked on the doorframe anyway. 3 firm taps on wood that belonged to her. Can we come in? Owen asked behind him. Walt dropped heavily into the wicker loveseat. It groaned but held. We're in the middle of something, he said. Grant stepped inside. His gaze moved over Inez, Luis, and Walt, cataloging them. I can see that. Owen remained on the porch. He had taken off his suit jacket and rolled his sleeves twice. His collar was still unbuttoned, but now his hair looked as though he had been pulling at it. Mara picked up the framed photograph. She was not sure why. Did you pack my room? Owen's eyes went to the garbage bags. I didn't have boxes. There are boxes in the supply building. The supply building was locked. You packed my room before the will reading. A flush climbed his neck. Grant spoke to Neil yesterday. He knew the broad structure. Grant did not flinch. Dad's intentions weren't going to change overnight. You knew. We knew the lodge was coming to us. I didn't know every personal bequest. So, when you sat across from me in that office, Mara, Grant said, we were trying not to make a difficult morning worse. She laughed once. You put my underwear in a garbage bag before breakfast. I told Owen to use the green storage bins. They had Christmas linens in them, Owen said. Grant turned his head. That's what you were worried about? They're embroidered. It was so perfectly Owen that Mara almost lost her anger. He had evicted her gently to protect decorative napkins. Inez stood and brushed dust from her skirt. I'm going to make coffee. There's no water in the kitchen, Walt said. There will be. She carried Mara's kettle toward the back of the cottage. Luis followed, taking the hint. Walt did not. He settled deeper into the love seat and crossed one boot over the other. Grant stared at him. My knees, Walt explained. You were standing 30 seconds ago. Used it all up. Owen rubbed his mouth to hide a smile. Grant's expression did not change, but he took one step farther into the room, away from the screen door that kept bumping his shoulder. We need to discuss your role, he told Mara. My role where? At Bellwether. I thought you covered that with the locksmith. The locks are standard procedure after a change in ownership. Our father has been dead 6 days, and the lodge has guests arriving every afternoon. Grief doesn't suspend liability. No, it just gives you a useful window for changing the locks. Owen stepped inside at last. Can we lower the temperature about 6 degrees? The cottage doesn't have air conditioning. You know what I mean? Mara did. He wanted everyone to say the same things in softer voices so he could call the conversation kind. Grant opened his leather notebook. Bellwether's been operating without a clear management structure for years. Dad kept too much in his head, and you were filling gaps without a defined position. My paycheck said operations coordinator. Your paycheck also averaged 29 hours a week while you worked closer to 60. I know, I was there. That arrangement was exploitative. Mara blinked. Grant went on, calm and infuriating. It was also unsustainable. Owen and I are bringing in a general manager with experience in upscale hospitality. Department heads will report through that position. Reservations and guest communication will be centralized. You're firing me because Dad didn't pay me enough. I'm ending an arrangement that shouldn't have existed by ending the paycheck. We're offering 12 weeks severance. Mara looked at Owen. He had stopped meeting her eyes. 12 weeks was more generous than Leonard Bell would have offered anyone he believed could find another job by Tuesday. It was also not enough to rent a decent apartment through the summer, much less repair a house that smelled like an elderly squirrel. "When did you decide this?" she asked. Grant closed the notebook. "The general manager accepted last night." Last night, Mara had been in the lodge kitchen arranging untouched funeral casseroles by expiration date. Owen had sat on the counter eating cold scalloped potatoes while Grant took a call outside. They had both known. "Who is it?" "Derek Shaw. He ran guest operations at the Haverly in Wisconsin." "I know Derek." Grant's eyebrows rose. "He applied here 3 years ago. Dad interviewed him for dining room manager and said he spent 40 minutes talking about napkin psychology." Owen coughed into his hand. "He has since managed a 4-star property," Grant said. "Do the napkins feel safer there?" Walt's boot began tapping the floor. Grant tucked the notebook under his arm. "You can make jokes, but Bellwether needs to change. Occupancy has been declining outside peak season for 6 years. Half the cabins need renovation. The kitchen is held together with electrical tape." "Duct tape," Mara said. "Electrical tape would melt. The point is, we're not inheriting some flawless kingdom. We're inheriting debt, deferred maintenance, and a brand that hasn't evolved since Mom picked the wallpaper." At their mother's name, the room changed. Grant felt it too. His voice lost some of its polished edge. "I love this place," he said. "I still do. That doesn't mean Dad ran it well." Mara looked at him more closely. He was sweating at his temples. His shirt had wrinkled beneath the arms, and there was a tiny nick on his jaw from shaving too quickly. For one disorienting second, she could see the boy who used to count the seconds between lightning and thunder, pretending he was doing it for her. Then he added, "Sentiment is why we're in this position." Owen walked to the crooked sailboat print and straightened it. It immediately tilted back. "The severance comes with a request," he said. Grant's mouth tightened. "It's a transition agreement." "What request?" Mara asked. 2 weeks, Owen said. "You help Derek get oriented. Reservations, vendor schedules, returning guest preferences, the things that aren't in the system, because they were in my head. Yes. And after I empty my head for him, I leave." Owen glanced down. "That's the proposal." From the kitchen came a metallic bang, followed by Inez saying, "That was already loose." Mara traced one thumb over the edge of her parents' picture frame. "No." Grant's response was immediate. "Then the severance may be reduced." "Grant," Owen said, "it's compensation tied to transition services. You called it severance. It can be structured either way." Mara set the photograph back on the table before she dropped it. "Get out." Grant held her gaze. "Don't answer out of anger. You brought a notebook to fire me in a condemned dollhouse, and you think I'm the one being emotional? The house isn't condemned," Walt said, "just insulting." Owen stepped toward her. "Take tonight. We're having dinner with a financing group, but I can come by afterward. You're having investors to dinner tonight?" It was already scheduled. Of course it was. She imagined strangers at her mother's table while the funeral lilies still browned in the breakfast room. Owen lowered his voice. "I didn't want you blindsided." Mara looked at the garbage bags. He followed her gaze and winced. Grant moved toward the door. "We'll speak tomorrow." "Bring boxes," Walt told him. After they left, nobody spoke until the SUV disappeared down the service road. Then running water shuddered through the cottage pipes, and Inez called, "It's brown, but it's ambitious." Luis emerged from the kitchen wiping his hands. He glanced toward the lodge, then at Mara. "They want your head," he said. Apparently Derek Shaw needs somewhere to put his napkin theories. Luis did not smile this time. "I mean, everything you know." The truth of that landed differently coming from him. Mara looked around at the sagging room, her displaced life, and the old umbrellas jammed into a dead fireplace. On the table, her parents laughed forever on the dock. "Then he can learn it the way I did," she said. That evening, the lodge windows glowed through the pines. Music drifted across the laundry yard, followed by the faint rise and fall of practiced laughter. Mara sat on the cottage steps, eating Inez's soup from a chipped bellwether mug, because she had not found the bowls. Her keys lay beside her, 17 small permissions that no longer opened anything. Behind her, the pipes knocked like someone trapped in the walls. Across the dark yard, A server in a white jacket hurried toward the lodge carrying a silver bucket of champagne. He saw Mara, hesitated, and lifted one hand. Mara lifted hers back. Then he went inside, and the service door shut between them. At 5:17 the next morning, the water heater screamed. Mara woke on the wicker love seat with one shoe still on, and her neck bent at an angle that felt medically significant. For 3 confused seconds, she thought the sound was a guest dragging a suitcase down the lodge's back stairs. Then the pipes shrieked again. She sat up. The cottage was blue with early light. Her father's photograph stood on the end table beside an empty soup mug, and a golf umbrella had fallen out of the fireplace during the night. "Good morning to you too," she told the wall. She found the water heater in a closet off the kitchen. Walt had described the noise accurately, except the goose sounded larger than average and had apparently discovered betrayal. Mara turned the hot water valve until the shriek lowered to an aggrieved whistle. A knock came from the front. She opened the door to find Luis holding 2 coffees and a red metal toolbox. "You're either extremely kind or here to kill the water heater," she said. "Both can be true." He handed her a cup and walked toward the kitchen without waiting to be invited. He had changed into his bellwether uniform, though the shirt was unbuttoned over a white undershirt and his work boots were unlaced. "You're early. You're loud." Luis opened the closet and crouched. The heater gave a nervous clank, as if recognizing him. Mara leaned against the doorway. "Can it be fixed? Everything can be fixed if you lower your standards enough. That should be on the town seal." He laughed under his breath and reached for a wrench. Mara drank the coffee. It contained more sugar than she usually took, but she did not complain. Her mouth tasted like funeral flowers and tomato soup. "Grant was here at 6 yesterday," Luis said. "Walked the property with some woman carrying a tablet. Wanted to know why the staff parking lot takes up lake-adjacent land. It isn't lake-adjacent. You can see the lake if you stand on Janet's station wagon. Did you tell him that? I want to keep my job through breakfast." Mara watched him work. Luis had been at Bellwether for 11 years and could diagnose machinery by listening through a wall. He rarely rushed. Even emergencies seemed to become mildly ashamed in his presence and wait their turn. "Did you hear who the investors were?" she asked. "Financing group out of Detroit. Derek gave them a tour. Derek's already here?" Luis sat back on his heels. "His shoes are very white." That answered more than he intended. Mara's laptop remained in the locked office. Her prescription glasses were in the family apartment, along with half her toiletries and the navy blouse her mother had bought her for job interviews. If Grant believed yesterday's garbage bags completed her removal, he had underestimated how thoroughly a person could spread through the place where she lived and worked. She showered after Luis restored the water heater to a grumbling truce. The bathroom had no curtain, so she hung a yellow golf umbrella across the rod and stood beneath a spray that shifted from cold to vindictive whenever the kitchen faucet ran. Luis knocked on the wall. "Pressure okay?" "Luxury experience. 4 stars? 3 and a threat." He left for his shift while Mara dressed in the least wrinkled clothes she could find. She walked across the service yard, carrying the empty Christmas box. Bellwether at dawn was usually her favorite version of itself. Before guests emerged in sandals and entitlement, mist floated above the lake, and the lodge's cedar siding looked almost black against the water. The kitchen crew played old Motown while they prepared breakfast. Coffee and bacon traveled through the open windows. Evelyn Bell used to say a resort woke from the back forward. Ovens first, then laundry, then front desk, and finally the guests, who believed the day had arranged itself for them. This morning, the kitchen windows were closed. A printed notice had been taped beside the staff entrance. Employees must use designated access points at all times. Below that, in smaller letters, "Professionalism begins behind the scenes." Mara stared at it until the door opened. Inez came out carrying 2 bags of damp towels. Her housekeeping uniform was buttoned to the throat despite the heat. "Don't ask," she said. "I didn't. Your face did. I'm looking for my laptop." Inez shifted the towels. "Office?" "Yes. Grant is in there." "Good." "No," Inez said. That was information, not encouragement. Mara took one of the bags from her. Together they carried the towels to the laundry building. Inside, industrial dryers rolled with a steady thunder. Janet Miles was loading sheets into the press, her silver blonde hair tied up in a green scarf. She raised 2 fingers when she saw Mara, but did not stop feeding fabric through the rollers. Morning, property owner, she called. Morning, designated access user. Janet jerked her chin toward the sign visible through the door. Derek says guests shouldn't see us coming through the lobby. Guests have seen you in the lobby for 19 years. And several survived. Inez dropped her bag beside a washer. Go get your computer before I decide to go with you. Mara returned to the lodge by the paved guest path. The front porch had been swept. 2 rocking chairs faced the lake, and a tray of coffee waited on a sideboard inside the entrance. She had set up that tray every summer morning since her mother became ill. Today, the cream pitcher sat directly on the wood without a saucer beneath it. The sight irritated her more than it should have. Derek Shaw stood near reception in a pale gray suit and the white shoes Louise had mentioned. He was broad-shouldered, carefully tanned, and smiling at a clipboard. His hair was shaved close at the sides and longer on top, as if 2 barbers with different values had divided the work. He looked up. You must be Mara, and you must be the man who made the sign. His smile remained in place. Guest flow is one of several areas I'm evaluating. That explains the cream pitcher. He glanced toward the coffee tray. It'll sweat on the table, she said. I'll make a note. You could put it on a saucer. He studied her for half a beat, uncertain whether she was joking. Then he crossed to the sideboard, took a saucer from the stack, and set the pitcher on it. All right, he said. Immediate improvement. It was annoyingly decent of him. Owen appeared through the office door. His sleeves were rolled again, and his hair was damp from a shower. When he saw Mara, relief flickered over his face before caution replaced it. You came. For my belongings. Right. Grant sat behind Leonard's desk with his laptop open. Their father's brass nameplate had been removed, leaving a clean rectangle in the dust. Mara stopped in the doorway. Grant followed her eyes. It seemed inappropriate to leave it. He's been gone 6 days, not exposed as a spy. I put it in the drawer. Which drawer? He closed his laptop. Good morning, Mara. Her computer sat on the small side desk where she had left it. She unplugged the charger and placed both in the Christmas box. I need to go upstairs. Owen took a ring of new keys from his pocket. I'll let you in. You could give me a key, Grant answered. The apartment is part of the business property. It's also where my toothbrush lives. We'll arrange a time for you to remove everything. I arranged it. Now? Derek had remained near reception, pretending not to listen with the concentration of a man listening professionally. A voice called from the porch. Hello? Is anyone in charge of luggage, or have I arrived at a spiritual retreat? Mara knew that voice. Eleanor Falco entered pulling a hard-sided suitcase the color of an eggplant. At 71, she wore white linen without fear, and carried herself like a woman who had spent decades making reservations under her husband's name, while considering him an administrative detail. She saw Mara and opened both arms. There she is. I called twice yesterday, and some gentleman named Keith tried to convince me I wanted Cedar 6. Derek stepped forward. Mrs. Falco, welcome to Bellwether. I'm Derek Shaw, the new general manager. Are you Keith? No, ma'am. Then you may be innocent. Mara set down the box. You're in Birch 2. I was told Birch 2 had been reassigned. Grant came out of the office. Mrs. Falco, I'm Grant Bell, Leonard's son. Eleanor's expression changed. Oh, sweetheart. I'm so sorry. For a moment, Grant was simply a grieving man being recognized. He accepted her hug awkwardly, one hand hovering before settling on her shoulder. Your father sent me a Christmas card every year, Eleanor said. He hated Christmas cards, Mara said. He wrote that in each one. Grant gave a quiet laugh. It sounded like him, not the version of him who carried a notebook. Then Derek checked his clipboard. Mrs. Falco, I'm afraid Birch 2 is undergoing a bathroom upgrade. Cedar 6 has one of our best lake views. And 17 stairs, Mara said. Eleanor tapped her cane against her suitcase. This isn't decorative? Derek's face tightened. The accessibility note wasn't transferred into the new system. It wasn't in the old system, Mara said. Mrs. Falco asked us not to put it there. I dislike being cataloged, Eleanor said. Birch 4 is empty, Mara continued. Same layout, 2 steps, grab bar in the shower. Birch 4 has a plumbing hold, Derek said. The hold is for the sink aerator. Luis has the replacement in his truck. Grant looked between them. How do you know that? Because I ordered it. Derek picked up the front desk phone. I'll confirm with maintenance. Eleanor took Mara's hand. Your father would be pleased you're here. The words entered gently and still found bone. Mara withdrew her hand to lift the Christmas box. I'm not, actually. Eleanor looked at Grant, then Owen, then the box. No one rescued them. Upstairs, Owen unlocked the family apartment. The room still smelled of Leonard's coffee, and the cedar blocks Evelyn kept in every closet. Mara passed the chair where her father's cardigan remained folded over one arm. Owen hovered at the bedroom door while she packed. "I'm sorry about the bags," he said. "That's the part you're sorry about?" "No, just the part you can fix with boxes." He leaned against the frame. "Grant thinks if we move fast enough, the place won't fall apart. And what do you think?" "I think he might be right." Mara folded the navy interview blouse into the box. "You knew Birch 4 was empty?" "No. You knew Mrs. Falco was arriving?" "I saw the name. You've met her 8 times. Owen looked toward their father's empty room. "I met 1,000 guests here. So did I." "That's exactly the point. You remember all of them." Mara put her glasses on top of the blouse. Downstairs, a luggage cart rattled across the lobby. Derek's voice carried upward, asking someone to find Luis. Owen watched her close the box. "We need you." "No," she said. "You need what I know." Apparently, those are different things. She carried the box downstairs herself. Grant stood behind reception with Derek, both examining the screen. Mrs. Falco sat nearby, drinking coffee, the cream pitcher safely on its saucer. As Mara passed, Eleanor looked into the box at the blouse, the glasses, and the electric toothbrush lying across a framed photograph. Her mouth hardened. She said nothing, but Grant saw it. For the first time since the will reading, he looked ashamed. Grant stepped around the desk. "I can take that?" Mara adjusted the box against her ribs. "You've taken enough." Eleanor Falco inhaled through her teeth. It was a small sound, but in the quiet lobby, it carried like a dropped tray. Grant stopped. Mara regretted the line almost as soon as she said it, not because it was untrue, because it sounded prepared, and she did not want Grant believing she had spent the night in the cottage rehearsing ways to wound him. Derek became urgently interested in the computer. Owen followed Mara onto the porch. "The offer still stands." "You mean the offer to pay me if I train my replacement? 12 weeks is real money. Then give it to me without conditions." "He won't." "You say that as if Grant is a weather pattern. He's trying to keep the financing together. And you're trying to keep everyone from noticing you agree with him." Owen's face closed. There it was again, Mara thought. His peculiar ability to be wounded by an accurate description. He took the Christmas box from her before she could object. "At least let me carry this." She released it because her arms hurt. They walked without speaking. At the divide between the guest path and the service road, Owen slowed. The cottage was visible through the pines, its loose screen making a faint clapping noise in the breeze. "You could have stayed upstairs a while," he said. "We didn't need the apartment immediately." "Then why did you pack me?" "Grant said it would be harder after." "For whom?" Owen looked down at the box in his arms. "Probably me." The answer surprised her enough that she had nothing ready. He carried the box all the way to the porch and set it inside beside the garbage bags. Before he left, he straightened the crooked sailboat picture. It tilted back while he was still looking at it. Mara waited until he crossed the yard, then pushed the picture deliberately farther crooked. It did not help, but it felt precise. Her laptop opened with 12% battery. She set it on one of the mismatched chairs because the cottage's only table was buried beneath umbrellas and a box of obsolete telephone handsets. The power cord had to stretch across the common room from an outlet that sparked when she plugged it in. Her bank balance was lower than she remembered. That was partly because grief had expenses no one mentioned. Black clothes, gas, deli trays. An obituary that cost $48 more if they included Leonard's photograph. She had paid the florist when Grant's card was declined because his bank flagged an out-of-state purchase. He had transferred the money later, but only after she reminded him. Her last bellwether deposit would cover the phone bill, car insurance, and perhaps enough lumber to keep the porch from separating from the house. Property taxes would come eventually. So would winter. She searched for hospitality jobs within 40 miles. Assistant front desk manager at a chain hotel near the interstate. $12 an hour and alternating overnight shifts. Events coordinator at a winery, bachelor's degree preferred. Reservation specialist at a lakeside resort, whose owner had once accused Leonard of stealing his soup supplier. Mara closed that listing. A new email appeared from Grant with an attachment titled Transition and Separation Terms. The message contained 4 lines. "Please review. If you agree, Neil can witness signatures tomorrow. The 12-week payment is contingent on 10 business days of transition support. We need your decision by 5 p.m. No hello, no mention of Mrs. Falco. Mara opened the attachment. The language made her sound simultaneously unnecessary and responsible for everything. She would provide passwords, vendor histories, guest preference information, operational procedures, and other institutional knowledge as reasonably requested. In exchange, Bellwether would pay her 12 weeks of her official average wages. Her official average wages. 29 hours a week. She read the figure twice, then laughed so loudly the screen door rattled in sympathy. A truck backed toward the porch with a repetitive electronic beep. Walt climbed out of the cab, wearing a canvas hat and suspenders. The truck bed held bundles of shingles in 3 slightly different shades of brown. "You bought those?" Mara asked through the screen. "Had them." "All of them?" "People overorder. People don't usually overorder 3 colors. They do if you wait 8 years. He lowered the tailgate. Mara came outside. "Walt, I can't pay you right now." "Good. I charge too much. I'm serious." "So am I." "This isn't enough to redo the whole roof. It's enough to stop the leak over the back bedroom, assuming the boards under it aren't porridge." He lifted one bundle, then looked at her clothes. "You own worse jeans?" "Yes." "Put them on." An hour later, Mara was on the roof, wondering if inheritance could be refused on grounds of altitude. The lake breeze cooled the sweat between her shoulder blades, but the shingles radiated heat through her knees. Walt worked with slow certainty. He pried up the damaged rows and showed her how to stagger the seams. "My father ever come up here?" she asked. "Once." "To fix the roof? To get me down. Your mother and I were having an argument. Why was Mom on the roof?" "She wasn't. That was the problem." "She was on the ground with better ammunition." Mara smiled. "What did you do?" "Suggested the staff cottage didn't need a stove." "Oh, your mother took feeding people personally." That sounded right. Evelyn could forgive insult, inconvenience, even mild theft, but not someone leaving a table hungry. Walt loosened another shingle. Beneath it, the wood was dark but solid. "She lived here one summer, didn't she?" Mara asked. "2. Before your grandfather let her move into the women's rooms above the old kitchen." Mara knew her mother had started at Bellwether as a waitress. She had seen the photograph of Evelyn in a yellow uniform, standing beside a younger Inez with matching trays balanced on their palms. But Leonard rarely spoke of the years before he married her, as if marriage had been the beginning of the useful record. What was it like? Hot. Crowded. Everybody smoked. The toilet ran all night, and one fellow from grounds snored so bad we thought about sinking him in the lake. Did Mom like it? Your mother liked people. Buildings were beside the point. Walt slid a fresh shingle into place. "Your dad used to come around after dinner service pretending he needed a wrench. Did he?" "No. He needed your mother." Mara looked toward the lodge roof, broad and clean above the trees. Grant had ordered it replaced 4 years earlier, after seeing storm damage during a visit. He had found the contractor, negotiated the price, and then returned to Chicago while Mara coordinated 6 weeks of work around 2 weddings and a family reunion. A nail rolled beneath her glove. She caught it before it reached the gutter. "Walt, did you know Dad had the cottage surveyed?" He shook his head. 3 years ago. Leonard surveyed something every time he got nervous. Drew lines around a problem, so it would sit still. You think I was a problem? I think all 3 of you were problems. That's what family is when you stop putting frosting on it." She waited for more, but Walt hammered the shingle down. By mid-afternoon, Mara's knees ached, and the patchwork roof looked like it had been repaired with toast. Walt declared it watertight. She suspected this was optimism rather than engineering, but when she climbed down, the cottage seemed a little less likely to dissolve. Inez arrived carrying a paper grocery sack. "I brought lunch. It's almost 4. Then I brought early supper. Inside the bag were turkey sandwiches, apples, and 3 blueberry muffins from Bellwether's kitchen. Each muffin had been wrapped separately in a napkin." "Did you steal these?" Mara asked. "I have worked there 27 years. When does taking a muffin become stealing? Legally or spiritually?" "Spiritually, never." They ate on the porch steps. Walt consumed his sandwich in 6 bites, accepted a muffin, and left without saying goodbye. He honked once from the service road. Inez examined the roof. "It looks diseased." "It's not leaking." "Disease can be dry." Mara handed her the phone with Grant's agreement open. Inez put on reading glasses and scrolled in silence. He pays you 29 hours? That's my recorded average. He should be ashamed. He thinks Dad should be ashamed. Plenty to share. Inez returned the phone. Are you going to do it? Mara looked at the lodge. A couple walked along the path toward the marina, the woman holding her sun hat against the breeze. Somewhere near the dock, a bell rang as someone requested a boat attendant. 12 weeks would help. Yes. But 10 days in there, handing Derek everything, while Grant acts like he bought it at an estate sale. Also, yes. Mara picked at the paper wrapper around her muffin. What would you do? I would not ask a woman who once threw a gravy boat at a supervisor. You threw a gravy boat? It was empty. That doesn't answer the question. It answers whether you should copy me. The staff door across the yard opened. Janet came out first, followed by Tomas from the kitchen and Renee, one of the front desk clerks. They carried paper cups and moved with the loose, weary posture of people between shifts. Janet spotted Inez and changed direction. The others followed. We heard there were muffins, she said. There were, Mara told her. Janet looked at the empty napkin in Inez's lap. This new place has gone downhill. Renee sat on the bottom porch step without asking. Thomas remained standing until Mara brought out the mismatched chairs. In less than 2 minutes, the porch held 5 adults, 4 coffees, 1 apple being passed around because nobody wanted the whole thing, and a detailed complaint about Derek's attempt to introduce a scripted greeting at reception. Welcome to your bellwether experience, Renee recited. What does that even mean? It means you've entered a building, Janet said. He wants us to say the guest's name twice. What if we don't like them? Especially then. They laughed. Mara did too, though she was aware of the agreement waiting on her laptop and the time moving toward 5. Luis joined them last, carrying a plastic chair with a split seat. He placed it beside the porch, judged it unsafe, and sat on the ground. At 4:52, Mara opened Grant's email on her phone. She typed, I'll provide all existing passwords and written records. I will not accept 10 days of transition work at an artificially low average wage. Please issue my final paycheck, according to state requirements. Her thumb hovered over send. 12 weeks was not dignity. It was groceries, lumber, gas, and the first property tax payment. It was the difference between choosing a job and taking the first one offered. On the porch, Renee was telling Inez how Grant had moved the employee coffee urn out of guest view. Thomas passed Mara the remaining half of the apple. She pressed send. At 5:01, Grant replied. Understood. Nothing else. Mara locked the phone and bit into the apple. It was tart enough to hurt her teeth. No one asked what she had done. They simply shifted their chairs to make room as the shade moved across the yard. The apple half turned brown on the porch rail before anyone remembered it. By then, Tomas had gone back to dinner prep. Renee had returned to reception, and Janet was standing in the yard arguing that the roof looked more infected from a distance. Luis carried the split chair away to repair it. Inez collected the paper cups, though none had come from her house. Mara remained on the steps with her phone in her lap. Grant's one-word reply had not changed. Understood. She had wanted him to argue. An argument would have acknowledged a cost. Instead, he had accepted her departure with the briskness of confirming a canceled reservation. Inez tied the cups inside the empty grocery sack. You can still change your mind. So can he. Yes. Neither of them said which was more likely. Mara's final paycheck arrived by direct deposit the following morning. Grant included every recorded hour through Leonard's funeral and paid out her unused vacation time. The numbers were correct. That made them harder to hate. She spent $62 at the hardware store on screen mesh, porch screws, caulk, work gloves, and a shower curtain that did not carry a golf logo. At the checkout, the clerk asked whether Leonard had left her bellwether. Part of it, Mara said. The lie came easily because the truth required architectural details. She repaired the screen with a video playing on her laptop. The man in the video made the work look restful. He wore spotless gloves and never had to remove 17 ancient staples using a butter knife because he had misplaced the pliers. Halfway through, Owen appeared with 2 green storage bins. Peace offering, he said. Mara kept prying at a staple. They're empty? I checked. No embroidered linens, not even a tasteful snowman. He set the bins beside the porch. He wore khaki shorts, a bellwether polo, and an expression of exaggerated caution. What happened to your screen? I'm fixing it. It looks worse. That's the middle stage of most repairs. Owen leaned against the porch post. It shifted. He straightened quickly. Did you get the final deposit? Yes. Everything right? Mathematically. He nodded as though she had complimented payroll. Grant said you declined. You mean Grant showed you my email? He told me. Same number of boundaries. Owen looked through the doorway at the crowded common room. Mara had cleared the umbrellas from the fireplace, but the obsolete telephones now occupied the wicker love seat. Her garbage bags leaned beside the new bins like disreputable relatives. I could help move things, he offered. Don't you have a resort? I've got an hour before the department meeting. What are you announcing? His surprise lasted too long. Mara set down the butter knife. What? Nothing dramatic. That phrase has never introduced anything good. We're standardizing employee meals. Standardizing how? Meals are a business expense. Right now, people take whatever they want from the kitchen, whenever they want it. They have staff breakfast from 7 to 9, and the kitchen plates whatever's left from lunch at 2. Exactly. There's no tracking. There's oatmeal, eggs, and toast. Do you want every raisin notarized? Owen sighed. Employees will get one meal during shifts longer than 6 hours. It'll be portioned in advance and eaten during scheduled breaks. Where? The break room? The room Grant wants for wine storage? He looked toward the laundry building. Mara stood. He told the investors that at dinner, didn't he? We need climate-controlled storage. You have a wine cellar. It floods. Then fix it. We are fixing 100 things. And somehow, the staff keeps becoming available space. Owen's face sharpened. You don't own the lodge, Mara. The words came out before he could soften them. She felt them enter. Owen closed his eyes briefly. That's not what I meant. It was exactly what you meant. You're talking as if every operational decision is a personal attack. No, I'm talking as if taking breakfast away from people who start work at 5 is cheap. They're being fed after 6 hours. Mara, go standardize something. He left the bins. At the department meeting, the employee breakfast became a daily meal benefit, which was management language for receiving less while being told to admire its shape. Janet reported the announcement that afternoon from Mara's porch. She imitated Derek's calm hand gestures until coffee sloshed from her cup. He said the new procedure promotes fairness, she told Inez. Fairness to whom? The raisins, apparently. Renee choked on her drink. Mara had not told anyone about her argument with Owen, but Bellwether required no official minutes. By the following day, everyone knew she had defended staff breakfast. The story improved in circulation. According to the kitchen crew, she had told Owen to notarize his own raisins somewhere anatomically inconvenient. I didn't say that, Mara protested. Thomas shrugged. People need heroes. Then they should find one with health insurance. The porch continued filling. At first, workers stopped only between shifts. Then they began bringing things. Janet contributed an old box fan with 3 speeds: silent, hurricane, and burning smell. Renee brought a folding table from her apartment. Thomas arrived with a coffee urn Grant had removed from the side station because it looked institutional. Luis repaired 2 dining chairs and reinforced the porch steps without mentioning it. Mara objected whenever someone spent money. No one spent money. They produced nails from garages, paint from basements, an unopened roll of wallpaper found behind somebody's furnace. Bellwether workers belonged to a parallel economy built from leftovers and favors. A person could acquire half a refrigerator if she was patient and did not care whether the door was yellow. While removing a swollen closet door, Mara found pencil marks running up the frame. They were not measurements. Names covered the wood in faint, overlapping lines. Benny, 72. Inez Sieg, 1984. Walt, don't touch my boots. Someone named Rose had written, I quit beneath a heart, then crossed it out and added, for 2 days. Mara sat back on her heels. Inez found her there 20 minutes later. You wrote your name? I remembered where I slept. I did not remember vandalism. You were a criminal. I was 19. Same thing. Inez knelt slowly beside her. She touched the letters with one fingertip. Evelyn should be here. They searched the frame. Mara found Evie near the floor, mostly hidden beneath paint, with a small arrow pointing toward the room. Why so low? We wrote them beside our mattresses. 6 cots, sometimes 7. Your mother took the one nearest the door because she hated climbing over people in the dark. Mara traced the E without touching it. What was she like then? too thin. Loud laugh. Terrible waitress for the first month. Mom? She forgot orders because she talked to people. A couple from Ohio waited 40 minutes for pancakes while she learned how they met. That sounds like her. She got better. Inez smiled. Leonard started coming through the service yard every night, pretended to check the boiler. That man did not know what a boiler looked like. Walt said it was a wrench. Your father had many imaginary responsibilities. Mara sat against the wall. Did she ever feel like she belonged here? In the cottage? At Bellwether? Inez studied the names. Your mother didn't wait for buildings to tell her where she belonged. The answer irritated Mara because it sounded wise, and wisdom was often impractical. Her phone rang before she could say so. The chain hotel near the interstate wanted to interview her for assistant front desk manager. The manager who interviewed her was a narrow man named Todd, who wore a plastic badge identifying him as Chief of First Impressions. He glanced through Mara's resume in a lobby that smelled of chlorine and cinnamon air freshener. You were at Bellwether 12 years? Full-time for 5? Seasonal before that. And why did you leave? Ownership changed. Were you dismissed? My position was eliminated. Todd made a thoughtful mark on his paper. Mara resisted the urge to explain that her brothers had inherited a lodge visible on clear days from the hotel's 3rd floor. The story would sound either tragic or suspicious, depending on whether Todd liked his siblings. He asked how she handled an angry guest. She told him about the man who had found a bat in Pine 9 and demanded the entire resort be evacuated. What did you do? Closed the room, called wildlife removal, moved him to Maple 3, and sent bourbon to his porch. Todd looked doubtful. That's not in our service recovery protocol. It wasn't in ours either. The bat hadn't reviewed the manual. The job paid $13.20 an hour, included overnight shifts, and required employees to buy 2 branded shirts after 30 days. Todd offered it to her before she reached the parking lot. She asked for 48 hours. Driving back, she passed Bellwether's entrance. A new temporary banner hung beneath the old sign, Elevated Lakeside Living, Coming Soon. Mara nearly missed the service road turn because she was staring at it. At the cottage, 6 employees were eating from paper plates around the folding table. Thomas had brought leftover chicken. Janet had brought potato salad. Renee had brought forks but no napkins, so everyone was using sections of paper towel. Grant stood in the yard. He still wore his office clothes, but his sleeves were rolled and his notebook was absent. He looked less like an owner than a man who had taken a wrong turn and arrived at a picnic where his name had been discussed. Mara, he said, can we talk? Everyone found reasons to examine their food. She set down her purse. Inside, here is fine. That meant he wanted witnesses, though whether for protection or performance she could not tell. 3 people were late returning from break today, he said. Renee put down her fork. Grant glanced at her. This isn't a disciplinary conversation. It sounds like one, Janet said. He looked back at Mara. I'm asking you not to interfere with operations. I've been at a job interview. Employees are gathering here during scheduled work hours. They're on breaks. Some breaks are running long. Then speak to the employees. I am speaking to my sister, who knows exactly how this appears. Mara understood then. Not the minutes, the sight of them. Workers at her table, eating food that had once been served inside Bellwether, the cottage becoming visible. I'm not poisoning anyone against you, she said. I didn't use that word. You brought it with you. Grant's eyes moved across the porch. The repaired chairs, the coffee urn, the cottage door standing open behind her. I need cooperation, he said. So do they. I'm responsible for keeping this place alive, and they're the ones doing it. Silence settled over the table. Grant looked at the paper plates. We still provide employee meals. After 6 hours in portions Derek chooses. That is standard at every professionally operated property. Bellwether wasn't every property. No, he said. That's why it's failing. Mara felt the workers listening. Grant did too. Grief and pride tightened his voice until they sounded alike. She could have humiliated him. She knew the unpaid invoices in the second desk drawer, the cabins that carried the summer, the years Grant had been absent. Instead, she said, they're here because you took away their table. Grant looked at her for a long moment. Then he turned toward the lodge. Nobody spoke until he crossed the service yard. Thomas lifted the bowl of potato salad. He didn't take any. Janet snorted. The laughter came carefully at first, then warmed. Mara sat among them, but she could still see Grant walking alone through the pines, shoulders squared against something no one else could see. Janet passed Mara a plate. "You didn't eat." "I had a mint in Todd's office." "Who's Todd?" "Chief of First Impressions." The table went quiet. Luis frowned. "Is that a medical position?" "It's a hotel position." "What was his first impression?" "That I require 2 branded shirts." Thomas spooned chicken onto her plate. "Don't take a job where the shirt costs money. All shirts cost money." "Not bellwether shirts," Janet said. "Bellwether shirts cost dignity." Renee looked at the logo stitched above her chest, and the thread scratches. The conversation moved on, but Mara saw Luis glance toward the lodge. Grant had disappeared inside. The dining room windows reflected the late sun, hiding everyone behind them. When the food was gone, the workers gathered plates and returned to their shifts. They left the folding table open. Mara folded it by herself and leaned it beside the fireplace, careful not to scrape the names on the closet frame. Todd called at 9 the next morning. "Just checking where you are in the decision process," he said. Mara sat at the cottage table with an electric bill, a property insurance estimate, and 3 tabs open to instructions for replacing porch supports, near the expensive part. He laughed as though she had made an interview joke. "We'd like you to start Monday. Training would be 6 to 2 for 4 days, then you'd move to the overnight rotation." "How many overnights?" 3, sometimes 4. "And the assistant manager duties, primarily desk coverage. We're a lean operation." Lean meant the title was free and the labor was not. Mara looked through the window at the cottage roof. Walt's 3 shades of shingles were already fading toward one another in the sun. "I can start Monday," she said. "Fantastic. Bring identification and dark slacks." After she hung up, relief arrived first. Thin, practical relief. Money would come in. She would have somewhere to go that did not belong to Grant and Owen. Then came the rest of it. The hotel's overnight rate would barely exceed her old official wage, and she would be sleeping through the hours when everyone at Bellwether stopped at the cottage. She hated herself for resenting a job she needed. At noon, she drove into town and bought 2 black polo shirts from a discount store. No logo, but Todd had said dark clothes were acceptable during training. She stood beneath fluorescent lights comparing prices while a slow love song played from a ceiling speaker. Her mother had once told her never to accept clothing from a man who chose the fabric. Mara chose cotton. On the way home, she stopped at the pharmacy to return Leonard's medications. The technician emptied bottles into a disposal bin without ceremony. Pills that had governed Mara's days for years disappeared in seconds. Blood pressure after breakfast, blood thinner at 6. The small white one he always claimed stuck to his tongue. She sat in her car afterward with the empty paper bag on the passenger seat. Her phone showed 2 missed calls from Bellwether. The first was from the main number. The second was Owen's cell. She called him. "Where are you?" he asked. "Town." "Can you talk Renee through the group booking deposit?" Mara closed her eyes. "No, it's not in the written procedure. Then Derek can figure it out. He's with a contractor. So are you. I'm trying to stop a wedding party from being charged $14,000 twice. Reverse the second authorization and call the processor before the batch closes." A pause. "Thank you. That was not me agreeing to help." "I know." "Do you?" "Yes." She stared at the pharmacy sign, reflected backward in the windshield. "I took a job." Owen's voice changed. "Where?" "The North Star off Route 31. "That motel?" "It identifies as a hotel." "Mara, you can't work overnight there by yourself." "I didn't ask your permission." "I'm not giving permission. I'm saying it's not safe. You own a cottage with a broken lock and put me in it." Another pause, longer this time. "I'll get the lock fixed," he said. "No. You just said, I said you put me there. I didn't ask you to come improve the thing you decided was enough for me." "Mara, not everything has to become a trial about the will. Then stop introducing evidence." She ended the call and immediately wished she had not. The old habit of protecting Owen from her anger remained even after he stopped protecting her from Grant's plans. When she returned, a locksmith's van was parked outside the cottage. Owen stood on the porch talking to Pat Donnelly, the locksmith Grant had refused to use. Pat held a drill and looked cheerful about being placed in the center of family conflict. "No," Mara said before she got out of the car. Owen lifted both hands. "I'm paying." "No. The back lock can be opened with a spoon." "It takes a knife," Pat said. A spoon would bend. Mara stared at him. Professional opinion, he added. Owen came down the steps. You don't have to let me inside. You don't have to talk to me. But let Pat make the house lock. You don't get to make yourself feel better by fixing my door. His expression hardened. Maybe I'm fixing the door because it needs fixing. Pat looked toward his van. I can inventory screws while you settle motive. Mara wanted to refuse. The new deadbolt would cost more than her hardware store purchases combined. Accepting it felt like allowing Owen to rewrite what he had done in brass and steel. But that night, she would sleep in the cottage alone. Change the front and back, she said. I want all the keys. Owen nodded. He did not smile. Pat changed both locks. He handed Mara 4 keys in a sealed plastic packet and invoiced Owen while standing in the yard. Before leaving, Owen noticed the penciled names on the closet frame. Mom's down there, Mara said. He crouched to see. Evie. Inez says she slept nearest the door. Owen ran one finger just above the letters. Dad knew she lived here? He used to come, pretend to check the boiler. He didn't know what a boiler was. Mara looked at him. That story I heard. From Dad? Mom. She said he wore a good shirt to the boiler room. They both laughed, and for a few seconds the cottage belonged to the same family in both their minds. Then Owen stood. Grant isn't trying to erase them. He took down Dad's nameplate, because sitting behind it made him feel like a fraud. Mara had not considered that. He could have said so. You could ask. He packed my room before I knew I'd lost it. Owen's face went still. I did that. You did it because he told you. I did it because I thought, if I handled it, you'd know your things were safe. In garbage bags. I made a bad choice a container. You made a bad choice. He nodded. The absence of defense left her nowhere to push. Owen rubbed the back of his neck. Congratulations on the job. You called it a motel. It can be both a motel and an achievement. Go away. This time she was smiling a little when she said it. Training at the North Star began with a video about loyalty membership. Todd sat beside Mara in a narrow office and explained that loyalty guests should be recognized within 10 seconds of entering the lobby. What if they enter from behind? She asked. We don't have a rear guest entrance. What if I do? Todd paused the video. You're quick. It sounded like a compliment he had not meant to give. The work was simple until it was not. The North Star had fewer rooms than Bellwether, and no restaurant, marina, weddings, boats, or 80-year-old furnace. Yet its problems arrived with the same human faces. A salesman wanted to know why the television had fewer sports channels than promised online. A woman attending a conference locked herself out while wearing a hotel towel in righteous fury. Someone microwaved fish in room 214 and triggered complaints from both floors. Mara solved what she could. Todd watched her calm an exhausted man, whose reservation had been entered for the wrong date. You're overqualified, he said afterward. Then pay me more. Todd laughed. Mara did not. At the end of her 4th training shift, she drove back toward the lake with the windows down to stay awake. Her new schedule began the following night. 3 overnights, 2 days off, then 2 more. The service yard was crowded when she reached the cottage. Workers sat on the porch and grass, eating scrambled eggs from paper bowls. Breakfast? Mara asked. At 3:30 in the afternoon, Janet said. Very innovative. The daily meal benefit, Renee added. Thomas held up a metal pan. They portioned 40 meals. 23 people were working long enough to qualify. What happens to the rest? I was told to dispose of them. So he had carried them across the yard. Mara set down her purse. Does Derek know? Derek knows food cost was already entered, Thomas said. There was something almost ceremonial about the gathering. People passed eggs and toast. Janet had brought hot sauce. Louise sat apart from the others on the porch edge, studying a folded sheet of paper. Mara lowered herself beside him. What is that? Renovation schedule. Cabin names filled 3 columns. 12 units were marked for electrical upgrades before Labor Day. They're doing 12 at once, 6 first, 6 after. Contractor says power can stay on in the occupied cabins while they replace panels. Can it? Luis folded the paper again. If nothing goes wrong. And if something does. He looked toward the lodge. A temporary worker crossed the yard, carrying a case of wine toward the old break room. Luis spoke quietly. Grant asked me to sign the completion checks. You always sign maintenance completion, not this time. He tapped the folded schedule against his knee. This time, they want my name before I've seen the work. Mara watched the wine disappear through the staff door. What did you tell him? Luis slid the paper into his pocket. I told him I don't sign what I haven't seen. The cottage door stood open behind them. Inside, the box fan roared, the old coffee urn gurgled, and her mother's penciled name remained low on the frame. Across the yard, one of Bellwether's new exterior lights flickered twice and went dark. Luis watched the dead light for several seconds. Related? Mara asked. No, that one's been bad since May. Comforting. I try. He stood, took the empty egg pan from Tomas, and headed toward the kitchen. Bellwether's dinner service began in 40 minutes. Whatever fear occupied Luis had to wait behind a leaking dishwasher and a freezer door that no longer sealed unless someone kicked the lower corner. Mara went inside to sleep before her first overnight. The cottage had absorbed the heat of the day. Her box fan pushed it from one side of the bedroom to the other with the force and volume of a small aircraft. She lay on top of the sheets, closed her eyes, and heard Janet laughing on the porch. Then footsteps. The screen door. Cups being set on the folding table. Mara opened her eyes. The cottage had become a refuge so naturally that no one had discussed when it stopped being private. She liked the voices. She liked knowing the building was useful. She also needed to sleep until 10. She pulled a pillow over her head. At 6:30, the laundry press began thumping. At 7, a delivery truck reversed the length of the service yard, beeping every 4 seconds. At 7:15, someone knocked because the cottage coffee urn had stopped heating. By 8, Mara was repairing the urn in her pajamas with a butter knife. Renee stood beside her holding the cord. You look rested. I can see sounds. Is that useful in hospitality? Probably on night shift. The urn clicked and began to warm. Mara returned to bed. When her alarm rang at 10, she had dreamed that Grant was trying to put a loyalty membership number on Leonard's headstone. The North Star lobby changed after midnight. Without arriving guests and rolling luggage, it became less a public room than a lit box at the edge of the highway. Moths battered the windows. An ice machine dropped a fresh load every 20 minutes, with the sound of distant furniture collapsing. Todd left at 11:30. Call if there's a major incident, he said. What counts as major? Fire, flood, death. In that order? He considered it. Use judgment. A note beneath the desk contained emergency numbers, but Todd's was written in pencil and partly erased. At 1:12, a man in room 108 called to report that someone was singing in the parking lot. Mara looked through the glass and saw no singer. At 2:40, a toilet overflowed. At 3:05, a woman bought crackers from the lobby shop and told Mara the moon was affecting her joints. At 4:30, when her body had become convinced it was being punished, Owen walked in. He wore jeans and a wrinkled blue shirt. His face looked gray beneath the lobby lights. Mara stared at him. Did Bellwether burn down? No. Flood? No. Is someone dead? Jesus, Mara. Those are the approved reasons for disturbing night staff. Owen glanced around. You're alone? Except for 61 sleeping strangers and one lunar-sensitive ankle. You shouldn't be alone. You've mentioned. He set a paper cup on the counter. Coffee. We have coffee. You have brown water in a glass pot. She took his cup. It was from the all-night gas station 2 miles south. He had added too much sugar, the way Luis did. Apparently, the men around her believed exhaustion could be sweetened into submission. What are you doing here? I was driving. At 4:30 in the morning, I couldn't sleep. So you drove 20 miles to criticize my workplace. 15. She sipped the coffee. How bad is it? Owen leaned both forearms on the counter. Grant's financing closes after the first 6 cabins reopen. The lender releases the next renovation draw when that phase is completed. Mara set down the cup. You're borrowing against Bellwether. We need capital. The roofs, plumbing, kitchen equipment, and the lobby furniture that looks like a dentist's waiting room. The furniture is leased. That's so much worse. He rubbed his eyes. The contractor is behind, Luis said. 2 electricians quit the crew. There were supply delays. We've already moved reservations once. Move them again. To where? We're full next weekend. If we keep 6 cabins offline, we lose the revenue and miss the completion date. That sounds like a problem for the professional management structure. I came to talk to my sister. At the motel, you said I shouldn't work in. Owen's mouth tightened. Can we not perform every fight we've had before we reach the current one? Fine, reach it. He looked toward the highway, where headlights swept past and disappeared. Luis won't sign the completion checks. He shouldn't. The work will be finished by Friday, then he can sign Friday. He wants a full load test after the panels are energized. That means another day, maybe two. And the contractor says it isn't necessary. The contractor wants to be paid. The contractor is licensed. So is Luis. Owen lowered his voice, though no one stood near enough to hear. Grant thinks Luis is making a point. About what? About the staff changes. About you. Mara felt something cold beneath her ribs. Luis doesn't need me to tell him not to sign unsafe work. No one said unsafe. You drove here before sunrise because a maintenance chief wants to test electricity. I drove here because Luis respects you. There it was. Owen looked ashamed of it, but not enough to withdraw the request. You want me to persuade him? Mara said. I want you to talk to him. Ask whether there's a reasonable compromise. A reasonable amount of untested wiring? It's not untested. Each circuit is being tested. He wants the occupied load simulation because Bellwether's demand spikes in the evening. Because every cabin runs air conditioning while the dining room, kitchen, and laundry are active. I know. Do you? Yes, Mara. I grew up there too. The words snapped between them. A door opened down the hall. A man in sweatpants crossed the lobby toward the coffee station, looked at Owen and Mara, and immediately became fascinated by the creamer packets. Owen straightened. Mara kept her voice low. Dad overloaded the West Wing during the fish fries 3 summers ago. We lost 2 freezers and the panel in Birch started smoking. I remember. You were in Chicago. You called me. Mara had? She had stood behind the kitchen at midnight, smelling scorched plastic, and called Owen because Leonard had refused to go to the hospital after breathing smoke. Owen had stayed on the phone until the ambulance came. He remembered the story. She remembered the room. You know what can happen, she said. I know we can't keep running the place if every department head decides deadlines are optional. This isn't linens arriving late. I did not say it was. You're asking me to help make Luis easier to overrule. I'm asking you to stop treating us like we want to hurt people. The man at the coffee station abandoned his drink and returned quickly to the hall. Mara looked at Owen across the counter. He was frightened, not only of the financing or the empty cabins, of becoming the kind of owner who risked people for a deadline, and of discovering he already was one. That frightened her, too. Load test the panels, she said. His shoulders dropped. If it costs you 2 days, it costs you 2 days. If it costs reservations, call the guests before they drive up and give them their money back. You make that sound simple. It isn't simple. It's right. Owen laughed without humor. There it is. What? You get to be right because you don't own the consequences. Mara stared at him. The words seemed to surprise him only after he heard them. He reached for his car keys. I'm sorry. No, you're tired. I can be both. So can I. Owen walked to the doors, then turned. You know Grant offered Luis a completion bonus? No. Luis didn't tell you that. Maybe because it doesn't matter. It matters if he's pretending this is only about safety. He refused money to sign early, and you think that makes him less trustworthy? Owen left without answering. Mara stood behind the counter until his taillights vanished onto the highway. The gas station coffee cooled beside her. At 6, she counted the register. At 7, Todd arrived smelling of aftershave and optimism. How was the first night? No fire, flood, or death. Perfect. Mara drove back toward the lake with the sunrise in her eyes. She intended to go straight to bed, but Luis's truck was parked beside Birch 4. The cabin sat apart from the main row, shaded by hemlocks. Its front door stood open. Inside, drop cloths covered the furniture, and a new electrical panel had been installed beside the bathroom. Luis knelt near an outlet with a testing meter. You're off, he said without turning. So are you. I started at 6. Then you've been working 4 minutes. He looked at his watch. 16. Mara leaned against the doorframe. Owen came to see me. Luis's hands stopped. He wants me to ask you for a compromise. Did you? I'm asking why they're in such a hurry. He returned to the outlet. Money, I got that part. Contractor replaced panels. Added circuits. Looks clean. Luis tapped the meter against his palm. But this place was wired in pieces. Kitchen gets busy, laundry heats up. Guests plug in hair dryers, voltage drops. New panels don't fix every old line feeding them. What do you need? One evening. Turn on everything in the 6 cabins. Run laundry and kitchen normal. Watch the load. And Grant said no. Grant said Friday opening means Friday opening. Luis removed the outlet cover. Behind it, a white wire curved against the box. He pointed without touching. A faint brown mark darkened the insulation. That's new? Mara asked. Maybe. Maybe old heat. That's why I look. The mark was no larger than her thumbnail. It frightened her more than sparks would have. Don't sign, she said. Luis met her eyes. I wasn't going to. A shadow moved across the open door. Grant stood outside. He had heard enough. Mara saw it in the stillness of his face. You're trespassing in a closed construction area, he said. It was an absurd sentence, too formal for the cabin where Mara had once spent an hour coaxing a squirrel out of the curtains. She stepped onto the porch. Load test the panels. Grant looked past her at Luis. I'll discuss this with my employee. Your employee is protecting your guests. My employee has a meeting with me at 9. Luis replaced the outlet cover with careful turns of the screwdriver. Grant moved aside to let Mara pass. As she walked by, he said quietly, You're making this harder. She stopped. No, Mara said. I'm refusing to make it easier. Behind them, Luis's meter gave a thin electronic beep. Grant flinched before he could stop himself. Mara saw that too. He was afraid. But at 9 o'clock, he called Luis into the office anyway. Mara waited on the cottage porch because Luis had asked her not to wait outside the office. They'll say you're pressuring me, he had told her. Am I? You're making my coffee. That's not pressure. That's revenge. He had drunk it anyway, standing in her kitchen while the wall clock moved toward 9. Then he buttoned his uniform shirt, wiped dust from his boots, and crossed the yard alone. By 9:15, the cottage coffee urn had attracted 3 people who had no reason to be there. Renee stood at the window pretending to check her phone. Janet folded and refolded a cleaning cloth. Inez sat at the table peeling an orange in one continuous spiral. At 9:27, Thomas came through the door. I have stock simmering, he announced. No one asked why he had abandoned it. Mara's body begged for sleep. Her North Star shirt still smelled of industrial lobby cleaner, and every few seconds her eyes lost focus. She sat on the porch rail, facing the lodge. The office window was hidden by white blinds. What can they be talking about this long? Renee asked. Ways to improve trust, Janet said. Inez separated the orange into sections and placed them on a plate. Eat something, Mara. I'm not hungry. Then chew without enthusiasm. At 9:40, the lodge's side door opened. Luis emerged carrying his red toolbox. He walked slowly, not with shock, but with the caution of someone moving through a room after the lights went out. Grant followed as far as the steps. Owen stood behind him, one hand pressed to the doorframe. Mara crossed the yard. Luis saw her coming and shook his head once. Not a warning, confirmation. They fired you. Suspended first, he said. Then I did not improve. Grant came down one step. Luis was terminated for insubordination and refusing a reasonable work assignment. Signing unfinished work. The contractor has certified the work. Then why do you need Luis's name? Grant's gaze flicked toward the cottage. He saw the figures gathered in its doorway. This is an employment matter, he said. It stopped being private when you made him carry his tools through the yard. Owen descended the steps. The load test is still happening. Mara looked at him. We agreed to do it tonight, he continued. Grant agreed. Luis set his toolbox on the gravel. After firing me. Grant's patience cracked. You refused a direct instruction before that agreement was reached. The instruction was to sign Friday completion. To sign after the contractor completed the scheduled work, before the load test. You were offered the opportunity to note your concerns, on a paper with my signature saying, complete. Grant stepped off the porch. You have disagreed with every operational change we've made. I changed staff locks, moved wine, fixed contractor damage, covered 3 double shifts. You told employees management was risking guest safety. I told you. You discussed it with Mara. Luis looked at her, then back at Grant. Mara asked. And somehow Mara is always asking. The words struck the yard hard enough to silence the dryers behind them. Mara moved closer. Don't blame him because I won't obey you. Not everything happening here is about you. No, some of it's about electricity. Owen stepped between them without quite placing himself on either side. Luis, I tried to stop this. Did you vote? Owen's face changed. The answer was no. Or there had been no vote. Luis picked up his toolbox. Then you tried quietly. Inez came across the yard. She did not hurry. She had put on her housekeeping cardigan despite the heat, every button fastened. Grant, she said. He closed his eyes for a moment. Please don't. Your father trusted Luis with this property for 11 years. My father also left 6 years of deferred maintenance. Because Luis kept showing him what things cost, and Leonard kept hoping they would become free. A faint sound came from Owen that might have been a laugh strangled by grief. Grant did not smile. We're not debating Dad's management. Good. We're discussing yours. Inez, Mara said softly. But Inez was looking at Grant with an old familiarity no job description could contain. She had changed his sheets when he came home drunk from his first wedding. She had stood behind him at Evelyn's funeral with safety pins in case his suit button failed. She was the only person at Bellwether who still called him Grant Ellis when he lied. You fire a man for refusing to put his name on something he thinks is dangerous, she said, and you'll have trouble getting the rest of us to put our names on anything. Grant's jaw tightened. Are you threatening to resign? I am telling you trust does not belong to the building. Derek appeared in the staff doorway. His gray suit jacket was gone, and perspiration had darkened his shirt between the shoulder blades. We need housekeeping back on floor 3, he said. No guest rooms on floor 3, Janet replied. The third group of rooms, Maple Row. Then say Maple. Janet, Derek said, please return to your station. She stepped out beside Inez instead. Derek looked toward Grant. It was only a glance, but Mara saw Grant become owner under it. Not brother, not son. Owner. Both of you are on scheduled shifts, Grant said. Return to work. Inez folded her hands. Rehire Luis. That is not your decision. No. Then return to work. No. Janet's head turned slightly toward Inez. She had not expected the answer. Neither had Mara. Grant went pale around the mouth. If you walk off shift, don't come back tomorrow. Inez met his eyes. I have been coming back tomorrow since before you could tie your shoes. This is exactly the problem. You think history makes you untouchable? No, Inez said. I thought it made me known. Something moved in Grant's face, quick and painful. Then Derek said, we cannot have department staff openly refusing instructions in front of the team. The team. Mara hated him for the word, though he looked frightened too. Grant glanced at the open cottage door, the workers, Luis's toolbox in the gravel. Pride finished what fear had started. You're both dismissed, he said. Owen stepped forward. Grant, you heard me? Inez didn't. She refused to work. So did Janet. I refuse to pretend this is normal, Janet said. Grant looked at her. Turn in your keys. Janet pulled a ring from her pocket and threw it underhand. It landed in the gravel between them rather than in his palm. Inez removed one key from a chain beneath her cardigan. The old brass master had been worn smooth at the teeth. She held it for a moment, then walked up to Grant and placed it in his hand. Your mother gave me that, she said. You should know what you're holding. Grant's fingers closed around it. Inez turned toward the cottage. No one spoke until she reached the porch. Then Thomas untied his apron. Derek saw him. Don't. I have stock simmering, Thomas said. Then go tend it. No. Thomas, Mara said. He looked at her. I am not staying while they replace everyone who remembers where the shutoffs are. Renee removed her name badge, but kept it in her hand. 2 laundry workers came out of the side door, drawn by the silence more than the voices. Grant surveyed them. Anyone who abandons a scheduled shift will not be eligible for rehire. It was meant to stop the motion. Instead, it defined it. Thomas laid his apron across the porch rail. Renee set her badge on top. One of the laundry workers went inside, then returned with her purse. The other stayed where she was, crying silently and looking ashamed of both choices. Mara's heart began to pound. Wait, she said. Everyone turned toward her. She had wanted them to resist. She had wanted Grant to see that Bellwether was not furniture, reservations, software, and lines of credit. But the people removing badges and emptying pockets had rent, car payments, prescriptions, aging parents. Mara had one-night job and a cottage with a roof patched in 3 colors. I can't employ anyone, she said. I need you to understand that. Luis nodded. We do. I don't have money. I don't have a business. This isn't for a job, Renee said. Then what is it for? Renee looked across the yard at Grant. A line. Grant flinched as though he had heard her. The departures happened without drama after that. Tomas returned to the kitchen long enough to turn off the burners and explain the stock to the sous chef. Renee finished checking in the guest already standing at her desk, then closed her drawer. Janet emptied her locker into a pillowcase. Inez took nothing but her purse because, she said, anything left after 27 years probably belonged to the dust. Owen tried to speak to her near the staff door. She touched his cheek. Whatever she said was too quiet for Mara to hear. Owen's shoulders folded anyway. By noon, 10 people crowded into the cottage. 3 had been fired, 4 had resigned. Others had come on breaks and would return to Bellwether because refusing a bad choice did not pay their electric bills. Mara made coffee. It was the only useful thing she could think to do. Louise sat at the folding table, filling out an online unemployment form on her laptop. Janet called her landlord from the back bedroom. Renee calculated how long her savings would last and announced, without humor, Thursday. Thomas opened the refrigerator. You have mustard and half a lemon. I just moved. You moved 12 days ago. I've been busy being disinherited, not an approved food group. Inez stood at the sink, staring toward the lodge. Her hands remained still beneath running water. Mara came beside her. Are you all right? No. Good. I was worried you'd lie. Inez turned off the faucet. I should not have made Janet follow me. You didn't. I stood where she could see. Outside, a Bellwether golf cart sped toward the guest cabins. Derek drove. Grant sat beside him holding a radio, both men looking forward. They'll replace us, Inez said. Not by dinner. No. But eventually, the honesty of it hurt. The front door opened and a woman Mara recognized from the marina office stepped inside. Leah Benton managed 6 vacation cottages for owners who lived out of state. She looked around at the crowded room. I heard Janet's available, Leah said. Janet appeared from the bedroom, pillowcase over one shoulder. Depends who's asking. I have 2 turnovers tomorrow and a cleaner who just quit by text. One place sleeps 8. The other has a hot tub that attracts people with no conscience. Janet looked at Inez. Inez looked at Mara. Mara held up both hands. Why is everyone looking at me? You schedule, Janet said. I used to schedule. You remember Leah's lock codes? Renee added. I do not, Leah said. Cedar House is 1942. Lakeview is 1111. Mara knew both. She hated that they knew she would. How much? Inez asked. Leah named a figure. Janet scoffed. For 2 houses? Leah named a better one. Thomas leaned out of the refrigerator, still low. You're not cleaning, Leah told him. He knows what grease costs, Inez said. Mara looked around the cottage. Unemployment forms, discarded uniforms, paper cups. Nothing about it resembled the beginning of security. But tomorrow existed whether they planned for it or not. She opened a notebook to a clean page. Tell me the checkout times, she said. Cedar checkout is 10, Leah said. Lakeview is 11. New guests arrive at 4. Laundry on site? Cedar has 2 machines. Lakeview has one that walks across the floor during spin. Supplies? Owners keep locked closets. Access? Leah hesitated. I have 1 set of keys, Mara wrote faster. Then Lakeview first. Janet and Inez start there at 8:30. When the beds are stripped, one of you brings the linens to Cedar and starts those machines. Luis can look at the washer. Luis raised his head from the unemployment form. Can. Did not say free. Leah pointed at him. I like him. He becomes less charming when appliances are involved, Mara said. Tomas, do you have a car? Car, yes. Gas, maybe. I'll drive. You worked all night, Inez said. I'm off tonight. That was not what I said. Mara kept writing. Renee, can you help until noon? I can help until forever. My schedule cleared up. The joke landed softly. Everyone was too close to the firing to laugh. Leah rubbed her palms against her shorts. I should be clear. This is 2 turnovers, not permanent work. We know, Mara said. And I need receipts if you buy anything. We know. And if the guests leave something terrible in the hot tub, we call the police, Janet said. We charge extra, Mara corrected. Thomas nodded. Then call the police. Leah left a keyring and half the payment in cash. Mara counted it twice, wrote a receipt on a page torn from an old bellwether message pad, then immediately disliked using the lodge's name for their work. She crossed out the blue sailboat printed at the top. Nobody commented. After Leah left, the room became quiet again. "What do we call this?" Renee asked. "Tuesday," Mara said. "It's Wednesday. That explains the hotel reservation. I almost checked out early." Luis returned to his form. "Call it 2 dirty houses." They did. Lakeview was less a cottage than a wooden box with a hot tub attached. The departing guests had filled every trash can and left a pyramid of empty seltzer cans on the kitchen counter. One bedroom smelled strongly of coconut lotion. The washing machine stood several inches from the wall. Its hoses stretched behind it like reins. Luis braced one hand against the lid during the spin cycle. "It is trying to go home," he said. "Can you stop it?" Leah asked. "I can level it. Cannot give it peace." Mara moved between the 2 houses with linens, supplies, and sandwiches Thomas made from what he called the cottage's refrigerated despair. At Cedar, Janet and Inez worked without speaking much. Their movements fit together after decades of cleaning adjacent rooms. Janet stripped beds while Inez started the bathrooms. They met in the middle and traded cloths without looking. At 1:30, Mara found Inez standing in Cedar's living room with a folded blanket in her hands. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." "You folded that 4 times. Inez sat on the edge of an armchair. "At Bellwether, I knew which blankets went in which cabins. These go in this one." "That is not what I mean." Mara sat on the coffee table across from her. Through the window, the lake shone between neighboring roofs. It was the same water Bellwether faced, but from here it looked less like family property and more like something no one had managed to own. "I thought I would leave when my knees made me," Inez said. "I did not think Grant would. He'll regret it. Regret does not put a key back in your hand." "No." Inez smoothed the blanket over her lap. "Your mother gave me that master key after the Labor Day storm. She said if anything happened to her or Leonard, I should know how to get to everyone." Mara remembered the way Inez had placed it in Grant's palm. "He knew what it meant," she said. "He knew it was old." They sat for another minute. Then Inez rose. "The new guests will not care about my personal collapse. They might if you leave it in the bathroom. That costs extra." Both houses were ready by 3:40. Leah inspected them with the anxious thoroughness of someone paying from a narrow margin. She checked beneath beds, ran one finger across a windowsill, and lifted the Lakeview toilet lid. Janet stood behind her with folded arms. "If you find anything," she said, "it arrived after us." Leah paid the balance. Mara divided the money on the cottage table that evening. She subtracted the cleaning supplies and gas, then pushed shares toward Inez, Janet, Renee, Luis, and Thomas. Thomas pushed his back. "I made sandwiches. You also cleaned a grill no one warned us about." It offended me. "Take the money. What is your share?" Inez asked. "I coordinated. You drove between houses for 7 hours. I'm not one of the people who lost a job yesterday." Renee looked at the black North Star polo Mara still wore because she had not changed. "Your job pays less than mine did. That's not relevant. It becomes relevant when you make it everybody's business." Mara took a share because refusing had begun to look theatrical. It covered the gas, the supplies she had advanced, and $12 more. $12 was not a business. It was, however, $12 she had not possessed that morning. The next call came from Leah before breakfast. An owner needed someone to replace rotted boards on a dock. Luis knew Walt knew someone with a lumber account. Renee's former roommate managed 4 rental cabins and needed weekend laundry. Thomas heard the Marina Cafe wanted help preparing boxed lunches for a sailing event. Work did not pour in. It dripped unevenly and at inconvenient hours. Mara began writing assignments on a sheet of plywood propped against the cottage wall. Names ran across the top, jobs down the side. She used colored tape from her old bellwether keys to mark cleaning, maintenance, laundry, and food. Renee handled calls when Mara slept after the North Star. Inez checked completed houses. Luis estimated materials with such honesty that 2 potential clients disappeared after hearing what repairs actually cost. Walt loaned them his truck. Loaned, he emphasized, not gave. The truck's passenger window would not close, and the fuel gauge remained at 3/4, regardless of reality. Someone had painted Walt's surname on the driver's door in white letters, then attempted to remove it. In certain light, it appeared their new enterprise was called Pritch. Sounds expensive, Renee said. The truck died beside the county road on their fourth job. Mara had just finished an overnight shift and was following in her car. She pulled behind them, with her hazard lights blinking, while Luis opened the hood. Walt's truck contained Inez, Janet, a floor buffer, 8 bags of linens, and 2 coolers of boxed lunches. The lunches had to reach the marina in 35 minutes. Can it be fixed? Mara asked. Luis looked into the engine. Everything can be fixed if I lower my standards enough. No, this time we need a fuel pump. The gauge still showed 3/4. Mara moved the lunches into her car, drove them to the marina, returned for the linens, delivered those late, then paid for a tow with the credit card she had reserved for property insurance. Walt apologized by blaming the truck. It knows better, he said. The dock owner refused to pay the final invoice 2 days later. Luis had replaced 8 boards, secured 2 loose supports, and rebuilt a step. The owner claimed he had approved only minor touch-up. Mara drove out with photographs, receipts, and the estimate bearing his initials. He stood on the repaired dock in boat shoes and said, "I'm not paying 4 men's rate when only 2 men were here. It's not 4 men's rate." He tapped the paper. Labor. Luis and Walt worked 17 combined hours. Then they worked too slowly. Mara looked at the new boards beneath his feet. "You stood here Saturday and told them to keep going. I was being polite." She understood then that no arrangement of facts would produce decency from him. "You owe $860. I'll pay $500, $750, $5." She took $650 after 40 minutes because Luis and Walt needed money more than she needed the satisfaction of being right. Back at the cottage, she paid them the full amounts on the schedule. Luis counted the bills. He paid all? He paid enough. Mara, take it. How much did you lose? It's covered. He looked toward her purse, where the property insurance envelope had become thinner. "This is not Bellwether," he said. "I know. You don't cover everybody because you feel guilty. I don't feel guilty. You look exactly like Leonard when you lie." That hurt enough that she turned away. At Bellwether, temporary workers arrived in matching black shirts. Mara saw them crossing the service yard while she loaded linens into Walt's repaired truck. They moved in a tight group, reading directions from their phones. The new electrical panels passed the load test. Luis heard through Thomas's former sous chef, who heard through the dishwasher repairman. Grant opened all 6 cabins Friday evening. No wires smoked, no guests were harmed. Mara was glad and resented being glad. Bellwether did not collapse without them. Breakfast was served, rooms were cleaned, boats left the marina. The resort continued, which was both ordinary and brutal. Then the smaller failures began. The temporary crew sent king sheets to cabins with queen beds. Derek assigned 2 arriving couples to Maple 3. A bride discovered the morning of her wedding that no one had ordered the requested table runners. The kitchen refrigerator failed on a Saturday afternoon, and the replacement manager could not find the number for the technician who answered weekend calls. Owen came to the cottage at 4:15. Mara stood at the folding table labeling envelopes. Inez and Janet had gone to a turnover. Luis was under Walt's truck again. Renee sat by the window, scheduling a laundry pickup. "I need Hal Sutter's number," Owen said. Mara did not look up. "Who?" "The refrigeration technician. The kitchen walk-in is warming." "Call Derek," he called the manufacturer. "They can send someone Tuesday." Then Tuesday sounds promising. "Mara, we have 200 pounds of food in there. Move it to the banquet cooler. It's full." The bar cooler, not cold enough. Renee quietly took her phone and went outside. Owen stepped closer. "Hal's number isn't in the vendor file. It was taped inside the maintenance cabinet. It isn't there. Luis kept it there for 11 years. Someone removed it." The accusation remained just beneath the sentence. Mara looked up. "Say what you came to say." He exhaled. "I'm not accusing you. You're standing in my house asking for something your owners fired, your brothers. Today you need to pick." Owen's face tightened. "People's jobs depend on the kitchen opening tonight." She thought of Thomas's former sous chef, the cooks who had stayed, the servers carrying trays through heat. Mara wrote a number on the back of an envelope and handed it to him. "Tell Hal the compressor shuts down when the lower fan vibrates. He'll bring the right bracket." Owen took the paper. "Thank you." Grant delayed that replacement in May. Dad delayed it for 2 years. And now, it belongs to you. Owen's fingers closed around the envelope. At the door, he looked at the plywood schedule, the labeled payments. and the old coffee urn steaming beside the wall. "You built this fast," he said. "It's barely standing, so is the cottage." After he left, Mara found Renee on the porch. "You could have charged him for the number," Renee said. "I should have." "No, you couldn't." Across the yard, Bellwether's kitchen staff began rolling metal carts toward the banquet cooler, moving food before Hal arrived. Mara watched them work. "They still think I'll save them," she said. Renee followed her gaze. "Will you?" Mara looked back at the crowded cottage, at people's names taped to jobs and wages she had promised before clients paid. "I don't know," she said. It was the first honest answer she had given all day. Renee leaned against the porch post. "That means yes. It means I don't know. You gave him the number. The food would have spoiled. And if their laundry press breaks, I'll send a fruit basket. What if a guest gets hurt?" Mara looked at her. Renee held up both hands. "I'm asking where your line is. I had one." Then people started standing on both sides of it. The service door opened across the yard, and Owen disappeared inside, carrying Hal Sutter's number. Bellwether's temporary workers kept transferring food in the afternoon heat. One dropped a tray of wrapped butter portions. 2 others crouched to help collect them. Mara went back to the table and finished labeling the envelopes. That night, at the North Star, she fell asleep sitting up. It lasted less than a minute. She knew because the lobby clock had moved from 3:38 to 3:39, and the man standing on the other side of the desk was still clearing his throat. Mara jerked awake. "Sorry, how can I help you?" He held out a room key. "This doesn't work." She reprogrammed it, apologized again, and watched him walk away. Todd arrived at 7, wearing a yellow tie covered in small blue stars. He checked the night log, opened the cash drawer, and studied Mara's face. "Rough one? Quiet. Quiet can be rough." She waited for him to mention the guest. Apparently the guest had not complained. That almost made it worse. "Todd, I need fewer overnights." He lowered himself into the desk chair. "How many fewer?" 2 a week. That leaves 1. "Yes. You were hired for overnight rotation." "I know. We don't have anyone else. You're chief of first impressions. Make one." He sighed. "Is this about your family place?" "My family place is why I can function without sleeping. It's the work I'm doing outside it that's the problem." "Another job?" "Something like that." Todd turned the logbook toward himself. "I like you, Mara. Guests like you. But I can't build a schedule around someone's side business." It was reasonable. She hated him slightly for being reasonable while wearing that tie. "If I give notice, how long do you need?" His expression became wary. "Are you giving notice?" Mara pictured the property insurance envelope, the broken truck, the dock owner bargaining while standing on their labor. 3 nights of certain wages were worth more than a week of hopeful phone calls. Then she pictured the man clearing his throat while she slept. "Yes," she said. 1 week. Todd took off his glasses. "That's not enough. It's what I can do. You just told me you need fewer nights. You didn't say you were leaving. I found out while we were talking." His mouth twitched despite himself. "You're going to make a terrible employee somewhere. I'm trying." She drove home frightened enough to feel fully awake. The plywood schedule had acquired 2 new jobs while she was gone. Renee had also added a column titled "Paid" in red marker. 3 question marks occupied that column. Mara stood before it with her purse still over her shoulder. "I quit the hotel." The cottage went silent. Inez looked up from sorting linens. Louise stopped writing an estimate. Thomas lowered a carton of eggs onto the counter. Renee said, "Why?" "Because I fell asleep at the desk." "How long?" Louise asked. "Less than a minute. That is not sleep. That is blinking with ambition. I gave a week's notice." Inez folded her hands. "Can you afford that?" "No. Can we afford you doing it?" The question moved through the room. Mara took off her purse and sat. "That's why we need rules." "Already hate this," Janet said from the back doorway. "No more work without a written price and scope. Materials paid in advance. Half of labor up front for new clients." "The dock man will refuse," Louise said. "The dock man can swim around his rotten boards." Thomas nodded approval. Mara continued. "I'm not fronting anyone's pay again. If a client doesn't pay, we decide together what happens." "You did that?" Inez asked. Mara looked at Luis. He looked at the ceiling. "How much?" Inez demanded. "It's handled. Mara June." "Don't full name me in my own house. Then stop behaving like your father in it." The words struck cleanly. Mara looked at the envelopes on the table. I wanted everyone paid. So did Leonard, Inez said. He also wanted nobody to know when he couldn't manage it. I can manage. With a credit card? Nobody spoke. Mara's anger rose, then lost its footing. 250. Luis frowned. You told me covered. I used a very flexible definition. Renee sat beside her. Your work gets a share before anybody's envelope. Scheduling, calls, invoices, driving. I'm not taking money from... You're not giving charity either, Janet said. That makes us people you rescue. I don't enjoy it. I am not rescuing you. Good. Charge us. By afternoon, they had agreed on a coordination percentage, a minimum rate, mileage, deposits, and what Luis called the idiot surcharge. Renee wrote everything in clear block letters. Tomas insisted the surcharge remain unofficial. They needed a name for invoices. Suggestions deteriorated quickly. Cottage crew, Renee said. Sounds like we paint seashells, Janet replied. Bell Services, Thomas offered. Grant's surname hung in the room. No, Mara said. Luis studied the plywood schedule, where green tape marked maintenance and blue marked cleaning. East Yard. Mara looked through the window. The service yard lay between them and Bellwether, gravel bright in the sun. East Yard Services, Renee said. Inez repeated it more quietly. That'll do. They wrote the name across the top of the board. It did not make them solvent. It did not produce insurance, contracts, or a reliable vehicle. But when Leah called that evening, Mara answered, East Yard Services, and nobody laughed. The next morning, Grant stood beneath the new words. He had entered without knocking. Mara was in the kitchen making coffee, and by the time she came out, he had read the rates, assignments, and read question marks. You've started a company on Bellwether property. I started it on my property. You're using a Bellwether address. It's my address, inside the resort service area. The cottage was less conveniently located when you gave it to me. His gaze moved to the folding table, the old coffee urn, and the envelopes arranged by name. Half these people worked for us. Past tense is doing a lot there. Some still do, on their own time. Renee used guest information from our reservation system. Mara went still. No, she didn't. Mrs. Falco recommended you to 2 guests. That's called talking. It creates the appearance that Bellwether is referring work to you. Did Bellwether refer me the dock owner who cheated us? Grant frowned, momentarily distracted. What? Never mind. He took a breath. I came to offer temporary work. Then your approach needs polish. Labor Day weekend is full. We need experienced housekeeping and maintenance coverage. 2 weeks, premium hourly rate. Derek would manage assignments. Luis, too? No. Then no. You didn't ask the others. They can answer for themselves. I can answer for East Yard. You were very concerned about not employing them 10 days ago. I'm still concerned. But you like this better. Everyone gathered around you. Everyone telling you you're the only one who understands how Bellwether works. Mara set the coffee pot down too hard. They gather here because you fired them. I fired Luis. Inez and Janet refused to work. You dismissed them after they forced my hand. Your hand seems remarkably easy to force. Grant's face flushed. We inherited $4.8 million in debt. The figure startled her. He saw it. You didn't know. No. Dad refinanced twice. Cabins, roofs, payroll during the shutdown. There was less equity than you think. And you still received the resort. We received every obligation tied to it. You received property with no loan, a rotting cottage. Clear title. It was not a hidden treasure. The cottage remained 4/10 of an acre behind propane tanks. Yet Grant looked at it as though Mara had been handed a lifeboat while he inherited the storm. You could sell Bellwether, she said, and be the son who lost it. You could keep it without turning it into something Mom wouldn't recognize, and be the son who let it fail. His voice cracked on the final word. Mara looked at him. Grant turned toward the window, jaw working. Dad called me every time a payment came due, every time the roof leaked, every time occupancy dropped. He did not call you because you were downstairs fixing whatever he was talking about. That wasn't freedom, no. But neither was leaving. For once they stood inside the same wound from opposite sides. Then Grant looked again at the East Yard board. You're undermining the lodge. The moment closed. No, Mara said. I'm building work for people you discarded. I did not inherit employees. Exactly. He faced her. You inherited buildings, Grant, not their loyalty. A vehicle honked outside. East Yard's first rented van waited in the road, white and unmarked, with Renee driving. Mara picked up her work bag. Grant stepped aside. 2 weeks, he said. Name a rate. Restore staff meals. Give department heads authority to stop unsafe work. Rehire the people you fired. That isn't a rate. It's what you need. No, it's what you want me to admit. Maybe they're the same thing. She left him standing beneath the schedule. The weekend approached under a heat that pressed the lake flat and bright. Bellwether filled every cabin. East Yard filled every line of plywood. Mara moved from turnovers to laundry pickups, answered calls while carrying coolers, and learned to require deposits without apologizing. Clouds began building in the west on Sunday afternoon. Luis saw them while repairing a dock ladder and checked the weather on his phone. Storm line, he said. The radar showed red and purple moving toward the lake. Tonight, Mara asked, after dinner, wind first. She looked across the water. Bellwether's flags hung motionless above the marina. On the East Yard board, 3 evening jobs remained. At the lodge, guests crowded the dock, dining room, and lower cabins. Grant had reopened every available unit for the holiday. Luis zoomed in on the radar. Lower road drain will clog, he said. Need to clear it before rain. Bellwether has maintenance staff. Temporary guy from Grand Rapids. Mara took out her phone. Owen's name remained near the top of her recent calls. She sent one message. Big storm coming. Clear lower road drain and check pumps by Birch Row. 3 dots appeared, vanished, then returned. Got it. Thank you. Mara put the phone away. At 6, the air changed. The lake went from silver to dark green. Wind rushed across it in one visible line, flattening the water as it came. Bellwether's flag snapped straight. The power flickered once in the cottage. Then the emergency siren at the marina began to sound. The siren rose and fell across the water. People on Bellwether's dock stopped moving. For one dangerous second, they all looked toward the lodge as if expecting an announcement. Then the wind hit. Chairs skidded across the marina deck. A blue umbrella tore free from its stand and tumbled into the lake. Someone screamed as a section of canvas awning snapped overhead. Mara ran. She reached the dock path as rain began in widely spaced drops that struck the dust like coins. A temporary marina attendant stood beside the rental board, gripping a radio. "Get everyone off the dock!" Mara shouted. He stared at her. "Who are you?" Someone who knows the siren means lightning is close. "Move." The certainty in her voice decided him. He turned and began waving people toward shore. Luis caught up carrying a yellow rain jacket he had not put on. Behind him came Renee and Janet. East Yard's rented van sat in the cottage yard with both back doors open, linens visible inside. "We have pickups," Renee said. "Cancel them. The owners can wash their own sheets if they survive the weather." Janet took out her phone. "Finally, a customer service policy I respect." Mara called Owen. No answer. The wind bent the pines toward the lodge. A guest in sandals tried to chase a hat across the wet lawn until Inez intercepted him and said something that made him abandon it. Thomas appeared from the service road carrying 2 insulated food bags. "What are you doing here?" Mara asked. "Dinner delivery canceled." A crack like a rifle shot came from the woods. A dead branch fell across the lower guest path. The power went out. Bellwether vanished all at once. The window lights, the marina lamps, the gold sign at the drive. A few seconds later, dim emergency lights flickered in the lobby and dining room. The cottage lights remained on. Separate meter, Mara thought, separate line from the county road. A cluster of guests moved toward the lodge entrance. Others stood beneath trees, holding phones in the air as if the weather might accept documentation. "Inside!" Mara shouted. "Please move inside, away from windows." A man carrying a glass of wine asked whether this was a tornado. "I don't know." "Shouldn't someone know?" "Yes." She kept moving. The lodge lobby was crowded and hot. Rain blew through the open doors. Derek stood behind reception, reading from a laminated emergency card, but no one listened because the alarm panel beside him had begun beeping. Owen came down the stairs 2 at a time. Mara. His relief was so naked that it frightened her. What happened? Lightning hit something near the main transformer. Generator started, then dropped half the circuits. Lower cabins are taking water. The drain? You cleared it. We tried. The grate's buried under runoff. Pumps? One is running. I don't know about the other. Where's Grant? Dining room. He's moving guests away from the windows. A radio at Owen's belt erupted with overlapping voices. Someone at Birch Row reported water under 2 doors. The kitchen wanted to know which refrigerator outlets remained powered. A guest at Maple 7 had chest pain, but refused an ambulance because the road was flooding. Owen pressed the transmit button, released it, then pressed it again without speaking. Mara took the radio from his hand. Renee, front desk. Make one list of every occupied room and where people are now. Nobody goes back to a cabin without being checked off. Renee moved. Inez, Janet, take the dining room. Get people away from glass, bring towels, blankets, water. They did not look at Owen or Derek for permission. Thomas, kitchen, already offended. Find out what equipment has power. Anything perishable that can't stay cold goes into coolers. He headed down the hall. Luis, lower cabins with me. Owen caught her arm. The path's flooding. That's why we're going. Grant entered from the dining room, soaked from the shoulders down. Nobody leaves the main building. Water's entering Birch. The guests are out. The new panels are there. Insurance can replace panels. Not if they energize standing water, Luis said. Main disconnect outside Birch Row. Need to shut it down. Grant looked at him. For the first time since the firing, they stood face to face. No, Grant said. The pumps are on that feed. Pumps plug into cabin circuits. If water reaches outlets, breaker may trip everything. Can you keep the pumps running? Portable generator. Do we have one? Luis's silence answered. Walt stepped through the lobby doors, carrying a red fuel can. Got one in the truck. His canvas hat streamed water down his face. Mara stared. Why are you here? Heard the siren. You live 12 miles away. Heard it on the weather radio then. Don't ruin the entrance. Grant looked around at them, the maintenance chief he had fired, the retired groundskeeper, the sister he had removed. The workers gathered at her voice. Mara, he said, if you take people outside and someone gets hurt, then come with us. He did. Rain struck sideways. Walt drove his truck across the lawn because the lower path was blocked by the fallen branch. Luis and Grant rode in the cab. Mara stood on the running board, one hand through the open window. Water rushed across the gravel around her shoes. Birch Row sat in a low curve near the service road. Brown water covered the first steps of 2 cabins. The temporary maintenance worker stood ankle-deep beside a pump, holding its cord above the water. Luis jumped down before the truck stopped. Unplug it. The pump will stop. Unplug it now. The worker obeyed. Luis reached the main disconnect and killed power to the row. The emergency lights in 6 cabins went dark. Walt and Grant unloaded the portable generator while Mara waded toward the clogged drain. Branches, pine needles, lake grass, and plastic cups had packed over the grate. She pulled with both hands. Nothing moved. Grant came beside her. Use this. He handed her a boat hook. Together, they dragged at the debris. The hook caught beneath a mat of branches, and Mara leaned backward until her boots slipped. Grant caught her under one arm. Careful. You too. They pulled again. The blockage released suddenly. Water twisted into the drain with a deep sucking sound, carrying leaves and one of Bellwether's white cocktail napkins into the dark. Grant stood breathing hard. Mud streaked his shirt. That grate was supposed to be cleared. I texted Owen. He sent the temp worker. Did the temp worker know where it was? Grant did not answer. Behind them, the portable generator started on Walt's third pull. Luis plugged in the pumps through heavy cords kept above the water. One coughed, then began drawing down the flooded path. A white flash lit the cabins. Thunder struck almost immediately. "Truck!" Luis shouted. They crowded inside Walt's cab and truck bed, while the storm passed directly overhead. Mara sat squeezed between Grant and the door, all 3 of them dripping onto cracked vinyl. Luis watched the pumps through the windshield. Walt held the steering wheel, though the engine was off. Grant's phone rang. He answered. "Owen?" Even from inches away, Mara heard her brother shouting. Grant's face drained. "We're coming." A pine had fallen near the kitchen loading area. It missed the building, but crushed the line feeding the emergency generator. The lodge had lost its remaining power. They drove back across the lawn. In darkness, Bellwether became unfamiliar. Phone flashlights moved behind windows. The kitchen doors stood open, and cooks rolled coolers into the rain, while Thomas directed them toward the cottage. Grant jumped down. The service yard is not a guest area. Mara stared at him. Neither is a dark dining room. We need to keep everyone in the main building. With no lights, no hot food, and water coming through the west windows, the cottage cannot hold a full resort. The yard can. Rain had eased from violent to steady. The worst wind moved east, but thunder still rolled over the lake. Mara pointed toward the cottage. Its windows shone through the wet trees. We set up food inside, coffee and hot water on the propane stove. Guests who need outlets use the common room. Everyone else stays under the laundry awning and banquet tents once the wind passes. The tents aren't erected. Then we erect them. Grant looked ready to argue. Owen arrived carrying the room list Renee had made. Water plastered his hair against his forehead. Maple 7's guest is stable. A nurse staying in Pine 2 checked him. Did you call emergency services? Mara asked. Road's blocked by a tree. They're sending someone when it's cleared. Keep him in the lobby near the entrance. I know. His voice broke on the last word. Mara lowered hers. I know you do. He looked at the cottage, then at the guests clustered inside Bellwether. Move them, he told Grant. Grant turned sharply. Owen held his gaze. She's right. For a moment, the storm seemed to narrow around the three of them. Then Grant nodded. The next hours lost their edges. East Yard workers and Bellwether employees raised 2 banquet canopies in the service yard. The first nearly lifted into the trees until Walt tied it to the laundry building with dock rope. Janet and Inez turned stacks of towels into dry stations and assigned temporary housekeepers by name, not uniform. Renee checked every guest against the room list. When 2 couples both claimed Cedar 8, she discovered Derek's duplicate assignment and moved 1 pair into the family apartment. Grant opened his mouth. There are dry beds upstairs, Renee said. He closed it. Thomas ran the cottage kitchen with the intensity of a battlefield commander and the equipment of a church basement. The propane stove heated soup in stock pots. Bellwether's cooks made sandwiches from food that could not return to refrigeration. Guests carried trays, poured coffee, and stopped behaving like customers when given something useful to do. Mara moved between stations until everyone seemed to need her at once. A temporary housekeeper asked where extra blankets were stored. A cook needed extension cords. Owen wanted to know which cabins had wood-burning fireplaces. Derek reported that 3 guests were missing from Renee's list. They went to town before the storm, Mara said. Blue sedan. Mrs. Brenner mentioned dinner reservations. How do you know? She talks when she's nervous. Derek looked too tired to question the method. Near midnight, Luis came into the cottage with mud to his knees. Water down at Birch. Panels dry. Main power. Utility says morning, maybe later. Kitchen generator. Lines crushed. Need equipment. Grant stood behind him. Can anything run from the portable? Grant asked. Pumps only. Leave it. Grant nodded immediately. The absence of argument felt larger than agreement. Mara found Inez at the closet frame, handing blankets through the bedroom door. Evelyn's penciled name remained visible near her ankle. You all right? Inez asked. No. Good. I dislike inconsistency. Mara laughed, then covered her mouth because the sound became too close to crying. Inez touched her shoulder. Keep moving. At 2, the rain stopped. Clouds broke over the lake, revealing a few cold stars. Guests slept in dining chairs, on lobby rugs, beneath the canopies, and across every level surface in the cottage. The guest from Maple 7 had been taken by ambulance after the road cleared. Renee marked him safely transferred on her list. No one was missing. No one had been shocked. No cabin had burned. Mara sat on the cottage steps with a paper cup of coffee she could not remember pouring. Her wet clothes had dried stiff against her skin. Owen lowered himself beside her. Grant remained in the yard, speaking quietly with Derek. You came, Owen said. Mara looked at him. I live 30 yards away. You know what I mean. She did. Across the yard, Luis checked the generator fuel. Janet slept upright against a laundry cart. Thomas had his head on folded arms at the table. Workers Grant had replaced and workers who had stayed rested beside one another without distinction. I didn't come for you, Mara said. Owen nodded. I know. It was the right answer. Dawn came pale over the lake. Bellwether's dark windows reflected the first light, making the building appear awake before it was. Grant crossed the yard. His face was gray with exhaustion, and a shallow cut marked his left cheek. He looked at Mara, then at the people filling her cottage and grounds. "Guests are gathering in the dining room at 8, he said. "We need to explain what happened." Mara waited. Grant glanced toward Owen. "The three of us should stand together." There it was, family unity, polished and ready before the mud dried. Mara set down her coffee. "No," she said, "we shouldn't." Grant stared at her. "They're frightened," he said. "They need reassurance that the resort is stable." "It isn't stable. We don't have to tell them that." They spent the night under a catering tent. Owen rubbed both hands over his face. Mara. She stood. Every part of her hurt. Her wet boots had rubbed the skin from one heel, and coffee made her heart beat without improving her thoughts. "I'm not standing beside you so you can say the Bell family pulled together. That is what happened," Grant said. "No. Luis came after you fired him. Inez and Janet came after you dismissed them. Thomas and Renee came after they walked away from their jobs. Walt came because Bellwether taught him to hear a storm siren from 12 miles away. They didn't follow the Bell family." Grant looked toward the cottage. "Then, what do you want me to say?" "The truth." "Which version?" The question was tired, not clever. Mara looked at her brothers. Owen's borrowed raincoat was torn at one elbow. Mud covered Grant's expensive shoes. For the first time since the funeral, neither looked as though he had arrived from somewhere else. "The version where you name the people who did the work," she said. "The version where you don't call them family until it's time to pay them." Grant flinched. Owen nodded. "She's right. You've said that a lot tonight." She was right a lot tonight. Grant's eyes moved between them. Mara could see him preparing a response, setting each word in order. Then he stopped. "All right," he said. At 8, guests gathered in a dining room, lit by battery lanterns in the gray morning coming through storm-streaked windows. The air smelled of damp carpet, coffee, and too many adults who had slept in their clothes. Mara remained near the back with East Yard. She did not stand between her brothers. Grant faced the room without notes. "We lost main power shortly after 6 last night," he began. "A fallen tree damaged our generator line. Water entered the lower cabin area, and the county road was temporarily blocked." His voice sounded too formal, but no one interrupted. "The emergency response did not go as we planned. Some of our systems failed. Some of our decisions before the storm made the response harder." Derek looked down. Grant swallowed. The people who kept everyone safe included Bellwether employees, guests who volunteered, and workers from East Yard Services. Luis Ortega shut down power to the flooded cabins and kept the pumps running. Inez Calder, Janet Miles, Renee. He paused and looked toward Mara. "Renee Wallace," she supplied. Renee Wallace coordinated room accountability. Thomas Reed organized food. Walt Pritchard brought the equipment that kept the lower cabins from flooding. My sister Mara coordinated the response. Grant continued naming people until everyone who had carried a tray, raised a tent, cleared a drain, or sat with the ill guest had been recognized. Applause began near the front. Eleanor Falco stood first. Her white linen outfit had acquired a brown stain across one knee, and she leaned on her cane while clapping. Others rose around her. Mara did not enjoy it the way she thought she might. Luis stared at the floor. Inez pressed her lips together. Thomas whispered that standing ovations made breakfast cold, but Grant did not step into their applause. He stood aside and let it pass toward the back of the room. That mattered. Bellwether remained without full power for another day. 2 lower cabins needed new flooring. The fallen pine had damaged the loading dock, and most holiday guests accepted refunds or left early. East Yard stayed through cleanup. Not as family. Renee created an emergency work order before Mara could lose her nerve. It listed each person's hours, equipment use, food preparation, materials, and the rental van. She added the idiot surcharge, renamed urgent conditions. Mara placed the invoice on Grant's desk. He looked at the total. "You're charging us for the storm. We're charging you for work. You live on the grounds. That reduced mileage." His mouth almost smiled, then he signed it. Payment took 11 days, 2 reminders, and 1 conversation in which Mara refused Owen's suggestion that East Yard wait until the insurance deposit arrived. When the money came, she distributed it before paying herself. Inez caught the omission and returned every envelope to the table until Mara corrected it. Bellwether reopened gradually. Grant brought in another temporary crew. Derek remained, though he stopped using the phrase guest flow and returned the coffee urn to the staff area. The old break room still contained wine racks. Inez refused Grant's offer to return as executive housekeeper. "I was already a housekeeper with authority," she said. "You just never wrote it down." Janet told him she would rather clean the Lakeview hot tub with a toothbrush. Luis listened to the full offer, including higher pay, then asked whether he could stop work without approval if he believed conditions were unsafe. Grant said there would need to be a review process. Luis declined. Owen came to the cottage 3 nights later with a legal pad, a box of pastries, and no jacket. "Those are Bellwether pastries," Thomas said. "I paid for them." With your own money? Owen placed the receipt on the table. Thomas examined it. Acceptable. They sat beneath the east yard board while the cottage fan roared in the window. Owen proposed a maintenance and housekeeping contract for the fall. Mara read the page twice. "You still have Derek managing us. He coordinates with you. He approves our staffing. He needs to know who's on the property. Knowing is not approving." Owen crossed out a sentence. Luis added language about safety decisions. Renee required deposits. Janet raised the holiday rate. Inez said little until they reached the section on employee meals. "Eastyard can't bargain for Bellwether staff," Mara told her. "No," Inez said, "but Bellwether can decide what kind of place it is before we agree to attach our name." Owen wrote daily breakfast back into the operating proposal. Grant rejected the draft the following morning. Negotiations continued across the service yard for 6 weeks. Sometimes Mara and Owen spoke as business owners. Sometimes they became siblings halfway through a sentence and had to start again. Grant attended the first meetings, then sent written comments, then stopped commenting at all. The brothers' arguments carried through the open office windows. Grant wanted the original renovation plan preserved. Owen wanted to close 8 cabins for the winter, repair the core systems, and abandon the immediate push toward luxury. Grant called it retreat. Owen called it operating the property they had, rather than the one Grant had promised investors. Mara tried not to listen. One evening, she found Grant alone on the lodge porch. The temporary banner had been removed. The old Bellwether sign remained, faded gold letters and all. He held 2 glasses of bourbon. "I'm not drinking with you if this is a negotiation," she said. "It isn't." That sounded like a negotiation. He handed her 1 glass. They sat in the rocking chairs facing the lake. The storm had stripped needles from the pines, leaving the shoreline strangely bright. "I'm selling my share," Grant said. Mara turned toward him. "Owen wants to buy it over time. The financing group will release me from the operating guarantees if he restructures and scales back the renovation. Can he carry it? If the fall numbers hold. If Eastyard signs. If he sells the leased furniture before it starts looking used." Mara sipped the bourbon. "That lobby furniture already looks tired. I chose it." "I know." He leaned back. "I have an offer from a hotel group in Boston. You hate Boston. I hate geese. Boston is more complicated." For a while, they watched the lake darken. "Did Dad tell you why?" Mara asked. Grant did not pretend not to understand. "No. He never said the lodge would go to you. He said Owen and I would have to fix the mess. I thought he meant operations. I didn't know about the will until Neil contacted me, but you knew before the reading, 1 day before, and you packed me anyway. Owen packed you. You let him." "Yes." Mara rotated the glass between her palms. "I kept thinking there had to be a reason. Something about the cottage. Something Dad knew that would make it fair. Clear Title didn't do it? No." Grant nodded. "I thought it might," he said. "Not make it equal, make it less cruel. Did you?" "No." The answer entered quietly. "He was unfair," Grant said. "Maybe he thought he was assigning roles. Maybe he thought I'd preserve the business. Owen would charm the guests, and you'd keep taking care of whatever we neglected. That would sound like him." Mara laughed once, painfully. "That sounds exactly like him. I was angry you got the cottage." She stared. "You got one small thing nobody could call you about at midnight. Then you built a business in it, so apparently I was wrong about the calling. You got a resort. I got Dad's unfinished argument with himself. You also got the resort. I know." It was not an apology. It was the closest Grant had come to standing beside her inside the truth, without trying to rearrange it. Mara looked through the dining room windows. Her mother's blue china still stood above the mantel. I loved him, she said. So did I. He was still wrong. Yes. Grant drank the rest of his bourbon. When he left for Boston, he did not ask Mara to forgive him. He returned the fishing rods to Bellwether's marina shed because, he said, none of them deserved the baggage fees. At the service road turn, he stopped his car, got out, and handed Mara Leonard's old brass nameplate. This belongs here more than in my desk, he said. Mara did not put it in the cottage. She wrapped it in a towel and stored it with the family photographs. Her father had belonged to her life. He did not get to name what she built next. Owen's smaller winter plan kept Bellwether open. 8 cabins closed for full repairs. The wine racks came out of the break room. Staff breakfast returned without being called a benefit. Department heads received written authority to stop work over safety concerns. Derek left in November for a convention hotel, whose napkins, he assured Mara, required serious psychological management. East Yard signed a 1-year service contract with Bellwether and kept its outside clients. Luis led maintenance without becoming anyone's obedient employee. Inez trained cleaning teams and still refused an executive title. Janet accepted the holiday rate she had invented. Renee became a co-owner and produced invoices no one dared misunderstand. Thomas expanded boxed lunches into small catering jobs, though he continued insulting every refrigerator. Mara belonged to East Yard no more than the others did, and no less. That distinction took practice. When she tried to cover a late client from her own savings, 5 people stopped her. When she worked through a fever, Inez locked her out of the office portion of her own cottage. When work slowed in January, they reduced everyone's draw together. Nothing turned instantly easy. The cottage porch required rebuilding in spring. Mara paid for lumber from her share, and Walt supervised while claiming not to. They replaced the listing posts, repaired the steps, and painted the front door deep blue. Inside, a local carpenter set a narrow pane of glass over the closet frame. The old names remained visible: Benny, Rose, Walt's boots, Inez in 1984, and Evie near the floor. On the anniversary of Leonard's death, Mara carried the folding table outside. She had planned supper for 8. 23 people arrived. Retired staff brought casseroles. Bellwether employees came after shift. Eleanor Falco sent wine and a note complaining that nobody had invited her early enough to travel. Louise strung lights between the pines. Thomas took control of the grill and rejected 3 offers of help. Owen arrived last, walking across the service yard with 4 dining chairs balanced awkwardly against his chest. Mara opened the screen door. "Did you steal those? Bellwether is lending them. Did you make a receipt?" "Renee made me." He placed the chairs around the long table, then returned for more from his truck. At sunset, every seat was filled. Owen ended up beside Mara on the rebuilt porch step, their plates balanced on their knees. Through the trees, Bellwether's windows glowed across the yard. The lodge was neither saved forever nor transformed into an empire. It was open, working, and learning the cost of the hands that kept it so. Owen raised his glass toward the cottage. "To Mom," he said. Mara looked through the open door at Evie's name beneath glass. "To Mom." He hesitated. "And Dad?" She thought of Leonard's thermos in her kitchen, his nameplate wrapped away, his love and his failure occupying the same memory. "To Dad," she said. "But he doesn't get credit for this." Owen smiled. "Fair." Around them, people passed bowls, argued over chairs, and called for more ice. Someone turned on the cottage lights. Mara could see the Grand Lodge through the pines, but she no longer measured the distance. She shifted closer to make room for Inez on the step. At Mara's table, that was how belonging worked. Someone arrived and everyone moved.